Wow. You have an opening command, Nushka?
It's not accurate, but yeah. Don't you?
Why would I want my opponents to know the openings I play? I feel like it's so much easier for them to prep against me. Like, if they really want to, they can go through the work of looking through my games.
You're a streamer. Okay, well.
Well, yeah, but like, it makes it just so much easier for them. Like, it's like, like you figure out who your pairing is like 2 minutes before the round. You just go to my
I don't
chat.
think just saying, okay, you know what? What if I just lie? What if I say I play the Caro-Kann and the Jababa London and then I like remove everything that I actually currently play? You know?
You could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I see shared chat is on.
Yes, you do need to mute yourself in the stream together, though.
Yeah, he did that. I think it's good.
I don't think so, because I can still hear him. I like it's duplicating and.
How about now?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So now we should be getting stuff from all three of us.
Her.
Wow. Oh, but I'm in manager mode, not chat mode. Let me click on chat. I see there's a crab in your chat, in somebody's chat.
Yeah, that's it. He's
Dominant crab.
No beta lobsters here. Only dominant crabs. Yeah.
Okay. It's working for me.
What was I gonna do? I was looking for something. Oh, my command.
Why set up the stream off stream when you could set up the stream on stream?
Yeah.
Everyone can take part.
Grow your audience while you grow your brand.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the game.
Hello, Walker. Yep. Hello, Abdallah Abu Samra from David's chat.
Hello.
It's not labeled which chat they're from, right? Unless they say
yeah, it does.
Like
there's a little.
Yeah. Like a little, profile picture. Yeah. You can see it in your like OBS chat window.
That's one of those things, Greasy, where once you get the answer, you can't leave the room alive, you know?
There's a command for everything.
There are things you don't want to ask.
Yeah. There is no everything command. I guess I lied. Oh, I don't know if we told you this, but Rachel and I are both learning French. I know you speak French.
Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah. I saw a funny TikTok today, and now like all I can hear in my head are the funny TikTok lines, and they're all in French.
They're all in French.
Did you see it?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
She knows that I haven't seen any TikToks.
I could send it in the Discord too. I sent it on Slack to my coworker because she also speaks French. So.
I asked. I'm not there yet where I can say things in French out loud.
Oh, but it's so
funny. I have a 10-day streak on Duolingo, so y'all need. I think that this is slightly
I have a 0-day streak. I lost my streak, but this is
from
This is my new like vocal stem. It's so funny. It's like there's birds, and he's like "Ne joue pas avec mon gang," and it's just funny. I don't know. Maybe it's like a Gen Z thing, but I couldn't stop laughing at it. Maybe I can play it on my stream.
I'm gonna go get a drink.
Oh, okay. She started.
I will be. Yeah. Oh, what? Oh, so you're gonna play?
No.
I thought you weren't.
I wasn't. You can go get a drink. I'm gonna play it on my stream.
Yeah, no, that's what I thought. Okay, I'm gonna go get a drink and then turn your stream on and then look at it on your stream.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Chat, are you ready? Oh, wait, I need to reload. Yeah, it's good. I'm gonna be saying that around lab a lot. People are gonna get sick of me. That's funny. Okay, thank you for the validation, chat. Hello, Kako. Hello, West. Yeah, it's funny. Like when you just hear sentences that you like that like get stuck in your brain. It's like you're practicing the accent in your brain. What does oopie goopie mean in French? I don't know. But I don't know.
Nothing.
But like, what?
Nothing. That's
Okay,
not
yeah, that's
French.
what I thought. It's just funny. Yeah.
Um, David, I'm not sure if you saw my endgame position. I guess it wasn't necessarily the case, maybe the exact part that I put, but my game, that game specifically ended up turning into a position where like right after Anushka was like, oh my gosh, it reminds me of the Winter versus Capablanca 1919 game, which I
Yeah.
didn't know, but yeah, it like, it literally, the resemblance was uncanny.
Yeah.
It was like not that position, but like maybe 5 to 10 moves down after the H pawns were gone. Like it was literally just that game, which was
Nice.
pretty crazy. Yeah.
I found that game in a Chess Dojo video.
The
That's
winter
that's
one.
where I saw it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I walked by her board and I was like,
That's
synapse
crazy.
fired. Yeah.
Yeah, you walk by, you're like, whoa, she's been preparing with Chess Dojo videos, playing out a
I'm like,
Capablanca game.
I think I've seen this before. Yeah.
I was on the losing side in this matter.
Okay.
Yeah, if I had.
Yeah.
But I mean,
so this end game
that
didn't go
cost
your
me the
way.
game that bit. What's that?
This end game didn't go your way.
No, I lost. I mean, my bishop was the one that was just stuck forever. Like I just couldn't figure out a way to get it out.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I think back when I had that position, like I still had a chance. Like I played, yeah, I still had a chance. Like the position that I sent. I can send the whole game. Just so you can see how it became that. But yeah.
We will gladly. Yeah, why don't you send me the whole game, and then I'm ready to start whenever you are.
Ooh. Yeah, I'm ready.
I'm ready too.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Let me just get the game, and then we'll be able to click through it for everybody as well.
Wait, the Capablanca. Okay.
Not the Capablanca game. The your game, right?
Oh. Oh yeah. No,
Yeah, who cares about Capablanca?
Oh wait, I'll.
That guy's irrelevant.
Let me do the PGN study PG.
Hello, Pizza Racer, and hello, All Star, and hello. I don't know if I said hello to Screws, but we all appreciate Screws. Yeah, sorry if we don't talk to chat so much during the lesson, but that's because it's for learning purposes.
Yeah.
Get some good learning in.
Chapter PGN. Okay. Here's the chapter PGN. Although I'm sure you can get it also from. I'm sorry, I was like analyzing some things earlier. Oh, this is too big to send. Really?
Study is private.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm not a lead chess expert either.
Public. All right, it's public.
Okay.
And I made a lot of sidelines. I'm just gonna delete those real quick, and then the fen will be.
I'm reloading.
Okay.
Maybe it's just me. It says it's still private.
Same.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
All right. I'm just gonna do this. Give me 1 second. Yeah, I got through like the beginning of analyzing it, and then I just inputted the rest of the moves for the remainder of it. Okay. This is the game.
Great.
Okay. Rachangel 225 2465. Oh wait, sorry.
Why does it say my current? That someone else was playing on my account.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you plug that into chess.com, let me know if you can see it. I can also put it in a classroom and share the classroom with you guys. The ending is really sad. We don't need to watch the end. I just missed a tactic, but yeah. Okay, I'm gonna send a classroom request, and I'm also gonna put the classroom in the chat.
Oh, okay. The classroom is great because then you just put the PGN
Yeah.
in, right?
Yeah, I already put the PGN in. Yeah,
Based.
and then I put the chat in, or the classroom in it. Yeah.
Based and PGN pilled.
Okay.
Great.
Well, this first comment's already great. Your opponent asks you after the game, is this a line? It's a double king pawn and you castle on move 5. Of course it's a line. It's like,
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
Wait,
nobody's
can I
ever
have
tried
terms?
castling?
Yeah, that's funny.
The problem with the Gioco piano is nobody ever thought of castling.
Yeah. So around move like.
This is the position that I saw.
Maybe like move 30-ish. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Move 30-ish. My bishop is just there's nothing to be done with it.
Yeah, it's just like a game. That's so cool.
I should have played
Beautiful.
bishop e3 like way back. I mean, my bishop was just bad the whole like once he got like h6 g5 and I should have played bishop e3 a long time before. But I just didn't realize to the extent that I would wreak that I would feel the consequences of that opening mistake.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it seems to me like you two are super ready to go, so I'm going to make an official start to the show here for the purposes of Matt or any other editors who want to do something with this later and post it somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, everybody, to Endgame Sensei. Once again, I am thrilled to be joined by Bloodqueen and Rachangel, aka Anushka and Rachel. We are going to be practicing the endgame for these two. I'm going to provide some degree of coaching, perhaps, somewhere in this thing. But the main way that they are going to be getting better at the endgame is by practicing with each other and then talking with each other. And this is kind of the crux of... it's one of the pillars of the dojo training program is something called sparring, which is just repeatedly playing certain positions against a training partner with some chatting in between. So that's what they're going to be doing. I'm here to add a little extra something. Maybe if I know something about some position at some point, I will add it in for the benefit of those watching. But I really want to emphasize that you can get really good at the end game without any coach or endgame sensei. That's just part of how this show works, but just the playing is already going to be really good for any of you out there. So we're going to click through this game since Rachel's provided us the link to the game. And last week we mentioned that a very good source of positions that you can practice and that you can get better with are positions out of your own games. You have a different kind of emotional attachment to those positions. You're more likely to remember any lessons you get from them. Like if you play out a Capablanca versus Winter endgame, you might learn something, but you will forget more than if you play out a game that you've played yourself at the Chicago Open. So that connection is going to help with retention. The positions may also, depending on what you choose, they may be relevant to the type of position you get more often, etc. Right? So it's just all around a great way of doing it. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to go over how she picked the position, and we're going to we're also going to click through the game. So quickly, without any coaching, hopefully, very hard for me not to coach, but we'll try and click through the game just to orient everybody to the position. Anushka or Rachel, I just talked a lot. Anything you want to say before we get into the game?
No, I'm just excited. I mean, and it was also the first time that like I had a game that, I would have never known if Anushka didn't say anything, but it was so cool to see like a really famous game and it like looked similar to my game and there are a lot of similar principles.
Yeah.
That's never happened to me before and I thought that was such a cool feeling. I was like, maybe, I mean, this is just coincidence, but like maybe I'm doing something right, maybe.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but were you on Capablanca's side of the story or Winter's side?
I was on the Winter side, the
Okay.
losing side.
So you were doing something right by going to the tournament and practicing, but in this game, potentially you were doing something wrong by playing like Winter?
Yeah, no, but I don't know. I just thought it was cool that there was like a really famous game, like just looking it up on YouTube, like all of the big chess YouTubers have made a video about
Everybody
it.
has a video about that one game.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, okay, like I can
Yeah.
learn so much from this. Yeah.
No, it's super cool. And that's one of the reasons why there is some value in learning a certain amount of chess culture, right? Is because these things do tie together and have connections. And I think if someone's newer to the game, they've been playing for 3 months, and they see in some curriculum list, oh, study this Morphe game and then study this Capablanca endgame, they're like, these guys are from 100, 200 years ago. What relevance does this have to my 3-minute blitz games using some weird gambit I learned from Eric Rosen, right? They're like, what are we doing here? Why does it matter? But you've just seen why it does matter. And it's crazy that Anushka had seen a video about the endgame. So if she had tagged in there, she would have actually been able to apply something.
Yeah.
All right. And yeah, I startled you a little bit earlier when you said that you lost the game, and I said good very quickly, and you were like, huh?
Oh.
But the reason that I said good at that point without thinking too deeply about your feelings, but was that because it's an endgame that you've lost, it's again going to be a chance for us to do this therapy portion, right? Because you're going to now draw or win this endgame against Anushka at some point. If not in the next 2 games, you're just going to keep going for weeks till one day you save the endgame against Anushka. And if you can't do it for weeks, then you'll really know to never play that position again. Like, if you can't save it after 8 or 10 tries, like, you will know never to play that position. Let's start with the position that you had told me you wanted to... that you had suggested as the fen. So I think it's coming up here. So we got a position like, I think it's this one, in fact, right here. So this is the position that Rachel first suggested to me, I think, as the...
Wait, are you in the classroom?
I'm not in a shared classroom, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I see, freezing cost. Okay, let's go there.
Yeah, and then just move the...
Okay, so we want to go to the position you first gave us, which was right... Oh, I can't click in the game right now. 1 second.
Oh, yeah, it's... Okay, now
Since I'm a
you should be able to.
participant, but not a black and white participant. Okay.
Okay, now you're a black and white participant.
All right, so we're going to be right here after the queen trade, right? All right. So this is the first position that Rachel suggested to us that we could use for sparring today, right? And so the very first coaching lesson for today is that this position has probably too many pieces on the board to be our sparring position. Okay, so
we can keep going. Yeah.
Right. So we're going to go a little deeper into the game, right? This position here is what I would call a queenless middle game. There's a lot of pieces on the board. And do either of you have a working definition for yourselves of what is a middle game versus an end game?
Okay, should we, like... Okay, I can go.
If anyone does.
Yeah, endgame means queens off and, like, I guess, like, 1 or 2 minor pieces traded off. And, yeah, I guess, like, in looking at this position, I want to say, like, less pawns than this, but I don't know why that would actually matter. So that would be my working definition.
Okay. Rachel, can you do any better?
I mean, it's hard for me to say. I want to say something like, oh, like more than half the pieces are taken, but it's like, where does that arbitrary line, you know, like there's not necessarily that arbitrary line. So maybe like a...
Do you think that there's a gray area or that there is a clear delineation?
I think there's a gray... Okay, yeah, I'm not sure.
Yes,
yeah, because there can be queens in the end game, like someone said in the chat too. Okay, yeah.
I just came up with a, like, the king can become a piece.
Yeah.
That would be where I'd call it an end game.
Okay, super. That's very, very good. That's a very good answer. So As some people pointed out in chat, there is such a thing as queen endgames, right? So, so the queen being traded is not going to be quite the working definition, right? So to me, there's two factors that kind of determine whether it's an endgame versus a middle game. In an endgame, the idea of queening a pawn should be plausible. And in an endgame, the idea of checkmating a king should be implausible. Now, that doesn't mean that you can never queen a pawn in a middle game, right? You've probably seen it happen a couple times. And you've probably seen a king get checkmated in an endgame. That also happens sometimes, right? There's a specific kind of endgame, which is queen and rook against queen and rook. Most people consider that an endgame and a heavy piece endgame. And that one is often determined by who can manage to create a checkmating attack with just two pieces. But it still sort of weirdly plays like an endgame because, well, it generally progresses slowly unless somebody messes up quickly, right? You have more room for maneuvering or time for it. So, yes, there's a gray area of positions where it's partly like a middle game, partly like an end game. Like maybe king safety still matters, but a pass pawn is starting to matter as well. Or it's becoming plausible to queen a pawn, but you also have to be careful with your king. But the two biggest factors to judge, is it more middle gamey or more end gamey, are king safety and passed pawns, right? So Anushka gave us one, the bigger of the two probably, which is the king safety. Can you bring out your king and use it as a piece? Yes. Probably an end game. So this position to me, I would say there's enough pieces on the board that if somebody brought out their king, it would be odd. It would raise some eyebrows, right? There's
definitely no pawn going to promotion anytime soon either.
There's no promotions, yeah. But let's say, I made some pawn advances and made a pass pawn. Would you expect there's a big chance of the pawn promoting right now?
No.
No, because there's going to be 5-6 pieces blockading it, right? You just have to trade and trade and trade and then eventually get your king in to break the blockade by having one more piece than your opponent, right? This f5 square is a weak square for black. If this were really an endgame, then the plan king g2 to h3 to g4 to f5 would be something you would consider, whereas here it's probably something you would laugh about.
Right.
Because I could go king f5, you'd play knight g7 check, king f6, I guess, knight d7 check, king to e7. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? Guaranteed loss for white. So this position here, I would still say is a middle game, and so we're going to play a few more moves until we reach a point which I would say would be a good position for us to practice. So white brings the knight to the weak square. Black defends the h6 pawn, then tries to trade white's best piece. Succeeds in trading white's best piece. White brings the king to the center of the board, and it's not because the king feels safe. It's actually because the king felt unsafe playing h4 with the king on the king side. Right, Rachel?
Yeah.
I'm just guessing because you were white. You're the only one who really knows. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like, now that you say it, like, I didn't really even consider like g2, h3, g4, f5 type of thing.
Right.
Yeah. I just didn't know what to do with this bishop.
Yeah, you didn't know what to do with the bishop, and the idea you came up with was h4, and you thought, if I'm going to trade pawns on the king side, I don't want my king on the king side, right?
Yeah.
So
I want to swing. Oh, I just want to be able to swing the rook over. Yeah.
Yeah. But to me, that's still a little bit middle gamey, right? That if you want to fight there, you're moving your king away from the area, and then you're going to fight there. Whereas in an endgame, you would probably bring your king into the area, right? As you said, king g4, king f5, then h4 would be stronger in an endgame.
Right.
So let's go a little bit further.
I shouldn't have taken on g5. He said right after the game, he's like, you should not have. He's like, after you take on g5, like, then there's really no hope for your bishop. But I just thought that he could just eternally not take, and it was still just as bad. But yeah, we don't need to look at this ending.
This position's looking kind of bad, huh?
But yeah, then so maybe it never got to the end game. This is the closest game I got to an end game, though.
Right. I see what you mean. It's kind of being decided towards the end of the middle game here, from my perspective.
There had
Late middle
better
game,
way.
Sensei.
All right. Well, we're committed to the whole endgame thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the position before you play H takes G, and we're just going to take a pair of rooks off the board and create a comparable endgame position for you to practice.
Okay.
That sound good?
Yeah.
So I'm going to grab this position, I guess. Where's the... The game
Talk
has been
about
named
too,
Winter
like-
vs. Capablanca.
Yeah. That might be something to talk about too, like, or just with, whoever ends up looking at my games, like, why is it the case that none of my games are getting to,
Yeah.
like, I won more than I lost them, but like the ones I lost before the end game. So maybe there's something to be said about like maybe being too risky or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. All my games went to the end games, and I went 1.5 out of 6.
Do you see a way to grab the fen of this position and or remove a pair of rooks and then grab a fen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Okay, yeah. Okay.
This is the fen, and then you can just delete the middle 2 R's, and that should be the right fen. And we should double check.
Because also I can just remove. Which rooks did you want to remove?
Any
The C rooks or? Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Did that work?
Yeah, that worked.
Okay.
Okay, so now what we'll want to do is we're going to grab a fen of that, and that's the position you're going to use to play with each other. Okay.
Joy.
And before we start the game, we're going to do a little guess the evaluation game together, right? And we'll let Rachel go first because it's her game, just like last time we let Anushka go first on the evaluation of her game. So, Rachel, we take a pair of rooks off for you here. And what do you think of the evaluation here?
I mean, my poor bishop.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I would pick black here any day. Just because there's no, I mean, even before training the H pawns, I mean, I just looked at this for so long and I'm like, I just don't know what to do about this bishop. Yeah. So I would say that this is like a huge Achilles heel of whites. Whereas black doesn't have an equivalent Achilles heel. So I would pick black any day.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. So we would pick black. I think thus far everybody in chat would agree with you. So I'm going to ask you to get even more precise. Do you think that black can win this position if they play really well, or white could still hang on if they played really well?
Well, I think white could outplay black and hang on. But I think if both players play equally well, then black should push through.
Okay. Okay.
Just
So with
because they
best
they
play,
have an extra piece kind of in my mind a little bit.
with best play, that sort of quasi extra piece should be enough to win. It should be a decisive strategic advantage.
Yeah, and then also, I mean, the doubled F pawns too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would consider honestly just giving up a pawn and to get the bishop out.
Mm-hmm.
So then maybe, I don't know. Maybe my answer might change if I can just give up a pawn. And then if you're down one pawn only, that's maybe not so decisive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly the extent to which it's decisive.
Okay. So it seems like you think it's borderline decisive, probably just barely losing, but you've got a new idea for white to try and sack a pawn. And to be clear, everybody, I think Rachel's thinking of playing f4 at some point, losing that pawn, then playing f3, and then bringing the bishop out from g3.
Yeah.
As a new idea. In the game, the idea she used was playing hg, fg at some point, and then she lost on the f file. So I think that idea is pretty much scrubbed. She's not going to be looking to repeat that.
Yeah.
But there may be other options. Anushka, what do you think of the question of can black win with very good play?
Yeah, I think black can win with very good play, but I don't think black is like completely winning the more I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean it's a close position, but we have the bishop pair. We have, I think, better potential to make a pass pawn on the queen side, but their rook is keeping our bishop tied down to the a pawn. On the king side, as long as we don't take, they don't have a really like concrete way of making a pass pawn yet, especially like while our bishop is still sitting on g3.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that I was thinking of was maybe going rook d1 and sacking the rook and then playing f4, because that way you're forcibly opening up the bishop, and at least e4 and a4 are defended by our bishop temporarily. That felt like the most concrete way to get the bishop out. And then I feel like after the rook sacrifice, the position opens up a little, and at least white has some play. Like I think it's dynamic still. I don't think there's like a clear like play these like 10 accurate moves and then black wins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So to you, there's still enough play for white to resist.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I guess like we'll play it out and I'll see if I still feel that way.
Okay. So you're both pretty close to the borderline.
Yeah.
So everybody, a couple points in common between their comparisons, right? They're both very concerned about the bishop on g3. They're both thinking in terms of very dramatic potential solutions for it, right? Either a pawn sack or a rook sack. Well, let's say exchange sack, so it sounds less dramatic. But either a pawn sack or an exchange sack in the endgame here to try to liberate that piece. So they're each considering, would it be better to be down a little material than to just keep looking at that stupid bishop on g3 and, hating how we got here. All right, I'm going to let them play and then share my thoughts with you all while they're playing and not listening to me. And that way I won't, bias the experience too quickly. It's really important to build up your knowledge a little bit more slowly by actually feeling it, by actually playing the moves, rather than just having a stronger player come in and just tell you what the evaluation is. We could go much faster, right? I could just come in here. We could already be done. I could have told them, here's what I think, blah, 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 blah. They wouldn't feel any of it. They wouldn't remember any of it, right? So we're going to let them start playing.
Cool. Which side? Who's playing which color?
Right.
Yeah, and 5:30.
So, Rachel, you can start with the black side.
Okay.
You were white in the game. We'll let you start with black. So, Anushka, you take white, and we'll go for, what do you think, maybe 2 minutes plus 30 seconds?
Okay.
Anushka, can you make it?
Yeah, I'm making it right now.
Thank you.
Unrated. I play as white. 2:30. Okay, you should get the challenge.
Okay. And then we're all gonna mute, right?
Yeah, in Discord.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay. Cool.
All right. So we're into the game. And my first thought here is excuse me. So my first thought in this position is that they're thinking more dynamically...
Thank you for making our streamers better chessers. This is such a great initiative.
You're welcome. So I think they both were thinking a little bit over dramatically about the issue of this bishop. You know, when you understand one feature of a position and you don't necessarily understand all the features of the position, it's natural to overestimate and overfocus on that one feature. So they were both like, oh my gosh, this bishop's terrible. I'm ready to, sack a pawn. The other one ready to sack in exchange. If you talk about the starting position, if Anushka used this idea of rook d1, rook takes d4, that's probably going to be just straight up lost for white. You know, the bishop doesn't magically become amazing. Neither of the bishops is amazing. So basically you're down in exchange. So you're just giving your opponent a winning material advantage right off the bat without any work to be done. The main idea for white that neither of them considered, that occurs to me, is the idea of passive defense. The idea, yes, I've got a bad piece, but can black come across the board into my side of the position and by force attack weaknesses and build a winning advantage, right? In the actual game that Rachel played, which we saw very briefly, we saw that she forced the issue and won the game for black by playing HG, FG, and then losing on the F file to her own F3 pawn, right? So the first game that we've seen from this position that was played in the Chicago Open, she lost by playing HG herself. You'll also note, folks, that she played B4 earlier in the game, forcing open the queen side against black's A5 pawn. That's also optional by white. She played HG, she opened the F file, and both suggestions that they made when we were evaluating and talking about the position were active ideas for white to basically actively run in front of black and lose the game so that black doesn't have to work for it. Okay? That's my take on both of their perspectives on this position. They each wanted to just go and hand the game to black. Now, let's see what they're doing as white. I'm almost certain that Anushka's going to play some aggressive moves from the way they talked about it. They're going to be feeling like they have to do something for white. That would also be how I would have approached a position like this long ago. I would have approached it as, my position's so bad, I have to do something so that I don't lose the game, right? Before I lose the game, I have to do something. I have to rush. I have to shake it up, right? More often than not, I would lose the game for myself by doing that before the opponent even had to work. So even if the position was lost, maybe my opponent wouldn't figure out how to win it. But I'm rushing to hand them the game, right? Before they can even set about thinking about how to win it. I'm just giving it to them. Okay? So I would think about this from white's perspective from the very first position as, what can black do to try to make inroads, to try and increase their advantage, to try to hurt me? And then what do I do to prevent that? Now, it's very natural to look in the direction of the bishop as white, because again, it's the factor that we understand. Even I am only truly confident that I understand this one factor in the entire, right, in the entire position. Even I am only confident that I understand this one factor. So we're drawn to that factor, and so we think of trying to attack it, and you'll see that there's this plan for black of knight f8, knight g6. For a moment, I thought that Rachel was going to play it. Oh yeah, she was planning to play it, and Anushka played h5 to prevent it, and the knight came back. So for me, starting from the very first position, I would also think about this knight maneuver. But the truth is that in general, attacking towards this bishop, then black's not up a piece, so to speak, right? Then they're trying to win a fight based on white having a doubled pawn, maybe, but they're bringing the fight towards white's bishop. So in theory, the main plan for black would be to play on the queen side with an extra piece, right? The main idea for black is to play on the queen side with the extra piece and try and do something there. Now, I think in general, white could play rook h1, and the threat of hg will force the black king to come sit on these squares, maybe blocking the knight. And Dabo's wondering if, specifically, when the black king moved this far away from the h-file, could white have played hg then, fg, and then rook h1, right? I'm not sure because black can go rook h8 now, and then they want to play h5, h4. So here we may have played hg too quickly. In general, Dabo, I would think that the move order would always be rook h1 first, threatening h takes g, and then we see if black has a defense against it. All right, let's see the position you're talking about after knight f8. Knight f8, threatening knight g6. So you're saying, could we play hg and then rook h1? Quite likely, but again, the best move order is almost always going to be rook h1, right? Threatening hg. Does black have a good way to keep our rook out of h6 and h7 and h8 here? No. So white could already have more or less saved this game on move 4 right here with rook h1, or as Dabo says, hg in theory would have probably achieved the same, but I never want to commit to this trade too soon. So I would always do this first myself. Okay, so we get h5. That stops the plan of knight g6. And knight came back to d7, bishop b3, rook f8. So it looks like black wants to break with f5, make room for the knight to come to f6 and attack the h-pawn. Yeah, maybe this bishop should not have gone to b3 last move, right? Suddenly this looks a little bit annoying. Maybe a good idea for black. Let's see, rook to c1, right? Active square for the rook. This pawn setup for Anushka, by the way, is a pawn setup that's attractive to me. I don't know if I would rush it versus playing some other maneuvers, but the pawns are well placed to make the bishop on b3 better and to keep these black pieces from using the b6 and c5 squares, which are the dark squares. So the rook comes back to c8, and now maybe f5 is not coming. But it could also come f5, ef5, and then knight f6 as a pawn sack. So white has to think about it. Plays bishop a4. I was thinking of this move. The idea to me is if f5, you trade the knight so it can't come to f6. King takes, pawn takes. And the point of this whole variation here is to put your king on e4 and defend these pawns. And although your bishop still doesn't have a way out, your opponent doesn't have a way in, right? Okay, we have bishop b8 after bishop a4. So black's not really threatening anything at the moment, right? I think bishop b8 is to free the rook to go back to this plan. Josu wants to try like a6, pawn takes, bishop c6, rook a1, something, win back the pawn. But be careful of trying too much and creating ways for black to then beat you on the queen side. They've got 3 bad-looking pieces against 2 good-looking pieces, but 3 pieces will beat 2 if we play a6. Right? So I would not be looking to open that up. Wow, she trades off her bishop pair to keep that knight off of f6. So that simplifies things in some ways for black. The king can defend this pawn now. The rook can come here. The bishop can come here. Maybe she's saying there's no black piece that can really get at these weaknesses now? Maybe she thinks she can just hold it. Rook c4. I don't know where that's going. It's interesting she hasn't done any desperate sacks for white compared to what she was first saying. She's playing a more moderate game where she's looking at what does black want to do and trying to prevent a lot of it, which makes sense. What stops c6? There's no one particular move that completely stops c6. It's a candidate move. I mean, from black's perspective, I would probably want to play this move that Rachel played first, right? Improve this piece before playing c6. b5. Okay, that's trying to stop c6 now. that does stop c6. Because now if c6, you could take this way and then play b6, right? And these white pawns are way too strong. Bishop c5 played. So that blocks off this, and I think the next step might be rook a8. And white has advanced so much, trying to stop black from doing things, but then the more you advance, the more there are different weaknesses. There's always something for your opponent to do. Now the plan is rook a8, rook a4, bishop b6, something like that, right? So Jay's asking why white can't themselves play b5 and a6 to make a pass pawn for white. Well, they can, but once they've got a pass pawn, there's a rook and a bishop fighting against their bishop. This piece can't get out yet. They'll just lose their pass pawn that they're making. You know? They'll just lose it eventually. Well, there's the desperate exchange sack. It did finally come, and Anushka's running low on time. And I think there's a very good chance that black will win the first game here. Just as I was noting how she'd played a more balanced game and a less desperate game. b6. So the idea is stopping black from defending this pawn. Black can trade and put the rook on the open file, and that's the end. Right, and the king can always come to d6 and protect this pawn if white's king attacks it. So it's all over. The simplest plan is to go rook a8, rook a1, rook h1, right? And then take the pawn on h5, make a pass pawn over here. They can see each other's video cameras even though the sound is quiet, yeah. Like in a real game, you know, you can read your opponent's body language if you want. That's how Kostya and I have also always played the end games against each other with Jesse watching. Is we muted it, but we could see each other. I noticed that Anushka got a bit lower on time here, you know, feeling the suffering of the white position, and Rachel had a little more time on the clock. Yeah, let's say we go back a little bit, Joe, and look at your idea for a moment, right? Let's say white here doesn't play b5, doesn't soften up these queenside pawns, says, hey, these pawns are good enough that it's not easy for black to take advantage like this. Bishop h2, there's bishop f2. So do you want to play maybe king e2, Joe? And then we'll try something like c6. Bishop h2. Takes, 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 takes. Bishop d4 coming here. b5. Just keep attacking it, and finally, yeah, black wins while you're trying to dig the bishop out, right? So basically, there was too much for black to do on the queen side by now. It was too easy for them to make progress faster than we could dig the bishop out. But notice, Joe, that we're 10 moves into the game, and white has spent 10 moves doing stuff on the queen side, right? Not 10 moves trying to dig out the bishop on g3. No, Mikkel, well, they're each talking to their own chat. Our mutual call is muted. So now CB, AB, rook A8. Yep. Activating the rook. I'll let them play a few more moves. Jesse would, if I were playing white here, Jesse would be interrupting to tell me to resign and stuff. The rook sack was pretty desperate. Okay. So that was game 1, and Anushka looks defeated.
I blundered.
Yeah? What was the blunder?
I should have gone king c4 instead of b6. b6 was a bad move.
What do you think, Rachel?
I also should have played h5 before I played knight f8. Like my plan was like knight f8, knight g6, you know, and then I needed to have h5 there before that, and I was kind of like kicking myself because of that, because it like kind of stopped all of my play on the king side.
Okay, so Anushka,
I don't think that. Or sorry.
Let's start with her claim. She says she should have played king c4 instead of b6. What do you think of that, Rachel? Did that occur to you during the game?
I mean, I was still kind of just like processing the sacrifice. I thought that like just playing f4 and then f3 was like I thought that would be a better route to counter, because then you're just losing your doubled f pawn instead, and then you get your bishop out. So I honestly like wasn't even there yet mentally. I was just like, wait. Like I wasn't expecting it at all.
Right.
So
I
didn't really
you just
see...
recaptured the rook and you didn't yet figure out what was going to happen afterwards.
Yeah. I knew I had to recapture the rook, and I was like, oh. But I mean, I can look at it now, but it's just like it's fresh eyes now. I'm thinking about it. I was just like,
Sure.
Okay, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. So Anushka, do you want to explain to us then the difference that king c4 would make?
Well, yeah, I just shouldn't have played b6 because I was scared of playing king c4 and then she plays b6 to like hold on to the pawn or whatever. But then I can go a6, and then at least I have like an asset, and like her rook isn't getting like she has a rook. That's what I didn't realize. She has a rook, and I have to like if the rook becomes good, then not only am I down in exchange, I'm just like completely lost. So I shouldn't have wanted any pawns to be traded, and I should have just it was like. I was also like time pressure kind of, and the minute I played it, I like regretted it so much. Like honestly, I was losing anyway. Like I feel like my position was much worse than I thought it was when I was doing the evaluation beforehand. But I felt like if I played king c4, I was anticipating b6, and I think that would have been better for me practically.
Yeah.
I just wonder, like, king c4, king d6, and then what's a continuation?
Yeah.
Then I just wait. Then I just go bishop h2, and I wait for you to do something, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, I was thinking, like... Oh,
Rachel,
sorry.
Rachel, before we get into that, which we will definitely get into, I'll just interject that Anushka has stumbled upon what Sam Shanklin told me is the number one factor to look at in exchange sacks is, does the side with the extra rook, do they have an active rook? Right? So sometimes you could think of it as like, is there an open file? But sometimes there's one open file and the entry points are defended and it doesn't really matter, right? So it's like, is the rook able to do stuff? Right? In this game, would we agree that after rook a8 was played, the game's over?
Yes.
Right? So very clear distinction. The position after a6, as Anushka says, she's traded no pawns. We can see the rook's not yet winning the game in any obvious way. Okay. So, very good, Anushka. Now, that said, Rachel says she would go king d6.
I think, I mean, just in general about like the, just waiting for me to do something, like especially after h5, like I really just had nothing. I felt like I had nothing to do with any of my pieces, and I feel like we both just kind of sat there like staring at each other, like shuffling things around.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, okay, I have to go for something or it's a draw, and I just like didn't see any way forward after
Right.
that. Like other than the once the king side was blocked off, I just like I really just was just gonna wait.
Yeah.
And I think if she hadn't sacked anything, I genuinely was just I had no idea what to do except just move my pieces around.
Right. And this is why I had you play black this first game after having played the game as white before. Because when you played this game as white, you sort of panicked, so to speak. You felt like my bishop on g3 is so bad, I have to do something. And then you went and did something that lost the game for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Now, when we were discussing the evaluation of the position before we started playing, you each said very similar things to that. You each were still saying, like, white's in danger of losing to the bishop on g3. They have to do something. You were thinking f4 pawn sack, Anushka rook takes d4, exchange sack. But once you sat down and spent 10 minutes playing as black, you understood, oh, wait, black needs to come up with a way to increase their advantage, find a weakness, push white over the edge, and I don't necessarily see how to do that, right? So the first step to playing this position better is to have some perspective of what black's position is like, right? Because from your perspective now playing as black, you feel like Anushka gave you the game with rook takes c5, and at the moment that she did that, you didn't yet have a plan for winning the game, right? So Anushka, even if the position was winning for black, had you sat around and not played rook takes c5, the advantage of your position would have been your opponent had no idea yet how to improve their position or win it. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I was just kind of just sitting. Yeah.
So misplaced desperation just hands our opponent points. Period, right? So you may be sitting in a position where you feel like you can't do anything, but maybe your opponent also feels like they can't do anything, right? So let's be very careful about when we want to get super desperate. That's exactly how I would have thought about this position as well. Immediately desperate a couple hundred points ago. But now I see it and I think, how is my opponent going to win? Well, maybe it's not that easy for them. And so the first thing I want to do is not just hand them the game versus the first thing I want to do is something desperate to save myself. And yeah, this position here after rook takes c5 should be lost because black can eventually play rook a8, right? And just attack your a pawn. Yeah. And I don't really see what you're going to do. You could start marching your king towards a4 to try and defend that square. And then
the c-pawn goes.
Then the c-pawn just goes, right? And your bishop's not stopping it. So eventually your king's going to step aside, right? And take the c-pawn. And black's got the a-file, and we know it's over. Nothing to think about.
Yeah.
Right? Once the rook is active, it's gone. You know, the easiest plan is rook a1, h1, h5. But it would be really good to know that it's just over without having to calculate further. If in evaluating the exchange sack at this point. Okay.
Yeah.
So now it's out in the open. We all share the same idea that, maybe it won't be so easy for black to win if when we play white, we don't do anything to get ourselves killed. We force black to show us how they're going to win. Maybe that'll save the game, but it'll certainly make our opponent play way better. Puts a lot more pressure on them. Now, before we play the next game, Rachel, you had a point you wanted to make about the early plans for black.
Yeah, I think that black could still black still had a plan until h5. I think that the plan of playing h5 first. To stop to stop them from doing that, and then maneuver the knight from f8 to g6, and then hit h4, and force that trade. And then you have the h and g, and you can start pushing those. I think that that's a really great plan for black. But once that stopped, that's when I was like, okay, I don't. But I think
Right.
before that, there was still a way to proceed.
Yeah. Now, very quickly, just note, it precedes the position we're using as our sparring position today, but note that the pawn is on h4 because white put it there, right? Even prior to our starting position, Rachel, you as white had played b4, opening the a file on the queen side, and you'd played h4, initiating action on the king side, right? So even prior to this point, some of black's best targets to try and do something have to some extent been created by white. So we could go even further back to more of the middle game position one day, and we could say, what if we don't play h4, right? What if we don't play b4? What if we just sit there with our pieces? What would black come up with then?
This is so helpful because I've never ever thought this. I'm like, oh, if I feel like I'm, like pressed against the wall, like I don't know what to do, then I need to like come up with something. I've never thought of like, oh, maybe you just sit there.
Yeah.
It's never something that crossed my mind, so this is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Anushka, did you consider h5 for Rachel here?
No.
Like the move before you did it? Did you
No,
see
I only.
Did you see the knight f8 plan coming?
No. Only after she played it.
Okay.
But yeah.
So once she played it, then you saw it and you stopped it with h5.
Yeah, like my plan was like on the queen's side more so.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, oh, make the knight stupid on the queen side, and then she played knight f8, and I was like, oh, I forgot that the knight can potentially reroute, and then I was like, oh, I'll just make it stupid on the king side.
Nice.
So it wasn't like pre-thought out. It just,
Right.
Yeah.
Now, this is not your classic bishop pair that white has, but that is the classic thing that you do when you have the bishop pair against a bishop and a knight, right? Is you try to make the knight bad. You try and use your pawns to kind of restrict the knight and keep it from getting any really great square. And oddly, you're still doing that here with a5 and h5 in this weird position where we've been mostly focused on the bishop g3 being bad, but there's other factors as well. Okay, so h5 is an interesting plan. You guys want to discuss that for a moment before you start another game so we can see if this is a plan we want to try for black?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think h5, like moving, or you can see my arrows, right? Yes, maybe. Yeah, okay. I think that if eventually, like, even if the rooks come here, it forces h takes g, and then when you have these two, I mean, you have the pass h pawn, and I feel like that's a good thing to work with. I mean, obviously, like, I don't know after that, like, how far you can get with, like, potential f4 things, but I think that there's a clear plan for black with that, or I like the plan, at least, for black.
Uh-huh. Yeah, Anushka, thoughts on that? Seems.
I'm trying to figure out if h5 weakens g5 in any meaningful way that allows like a bishop sack on e5 or something that like like makes it easier for white to open the position. I don't think it does, but that's what I would still try to play for. Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's play some more games.
Okay. I will make a challenge.
And I'm gonna be white this time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your first chance at therapeutic release.
Yeah, I have a plan now. Before I was like, now my plan is no plan.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes the best plan is to not.
You're at least approaching it without that panic from before.
Yeah. We'll see how this goes. I'm curious.
Okie doke.
Let me mute. Sorry.
Okay. I'll mute over there too. And we'll watch this game. Okay. Leading confidently with the same first move. I guess, are they playing this on the first move because they're pumped about the idea of f4, pawn takes, bishop takes f4 or something? Maybe that's why they're both starting with this king d3 move. The bishop gets out of the way of the king, so I think they're thinking about this kind of tactic. It does stop the rook from going over here. So, Joe, I'm not yet telling them about rook h1. There are a few things I'm holding back because I want to give them a little more room to keep learning some of these things on their own and not feed them too much from myself, right? But two prominent points that we haven't shared with them that we saw during the first game are that there was a moment where white could just play rook h1, hg, and just get the h file in the first game. That's like a little detail. And then the second big thing is they each are playing on the wrong side of the board. That's the huge news for them at some point, right? Is they both think that black should be playing on the king side, exploiting the pawn structure straight into the bad bishop. And they each think that white should be trying to make inroads on the queen side. But anything white does on the queen side can pretty much only open that area so that black then wins with their extra piece on the queen side. You see? So there are exceptions. It's not 100% black should never play on the king side. It's not 100% white should never play on the queen side. But almost. Almost. They certainly are looking in the wrong direction. So we'll see how that plays out. Knight to b8. Wow, trapping all these pieces in here. I mean, rook h1 is immediately amazing. We'll see if they notice it. The reason it's so amazing is nobody can get here. The knight can't get there. The rook can't get there. And if king here, there's bishop e8. Oh, God. Right? Let's see. Let's see if Rachel, this is her first chance to do better than she did in her tournament game. Her first chance to repair her errors from the past and see how far she's already come. You would think, Pizza Racer, that this black rook on a8 is like the birthday boy or birthday girl, right? And everybody wants to be next to the most important person of the party. Rachel's having a real think. I think they both show good concentration when we do this endgame sparring. I wonder... I've never watched them play OTB. I wonder if concentration is in general a strong point of theirs, or if somehow they're just really into this particular exercise. We've got to move from white. Bishop to b5. Theory, wherever your knight goes, I will now trade it. A strange threat, since trading this bishop leaves you without the bishop pair and isolates this guy even more, right? Black plays bishop d4, so I assume rook h1 works for one more move, but it doesn't seem to be on either of their radars yet. An interesting other thing you could think is that if the knight ever goes to a6, it's going to be a chance for your bishop to come into d7 and e6 and f5. I, from the very starting position, wondered about somehow freeing up this bishop to eventually come around here. I thought that might be a nice improvement of that piece. And so definitely after knight b8, it occurs to me that if the knight ever comes to a6, we do have bishop d7. So one move I would consider here for white would be something like king c4, defending my pawn. Now if knight a6, my pawn's not attacked, and I can come in like this. Of course, I mean, rook h1 is stronger than any other idea. Oh, and now the electrifying f4, the move that that Rachel's always wanted to play. Yeah, and Joe, interesting point from Joe. Joe says, I wonder if, with this bishop a4 idea, if black defended it, could white hold the entire game just by playing rook h1, targeting that pawn, black plays rook h8 to defend it. Now, there's really no plan for black here on the king side, but note that black has tied their rook down to defense. They can't undertake anything. And if white just plays, king c4 or b5 or something, does black have any plan to improve their position and win here? This could be a fortress for white. So this idea of bringing the bishop to a4 might be a very nice idea. Whoa. Rachel sacks a piece. I thought her point was something more like rook g2 or rook f1, but I guess she thought after bishop f4, or bishop h4, she'd be down 2 pawns. So instead, she's going to offer a bishop sack in this endgame with the idea of trapping that knight abysmally, right? The idea is ef4, rook takes check. She's playing reasonably quickly. She didn't get down to seconds on the clock and then make a desperate decision. Actually, king here, it might almost get mated on g6 by this bishop coming through. So let's put it maybe here. I guess white can keep giving check until you do come up. Is this plausible for white? I guess so. Borderline plausible. It's a little bit insane. Black takes the piece. White gives the check. She's playing in the kind of dramatic fashion that we tried to calm down about, but they each really thought this f4 was a thing. But I'm not totally convinced tactically. Not easy. I suppose the king could eventually go king f8, king e7, king d8 to avoid repetition checks. If white plays rook c8 tying down these pieces, I feel like it's not quite enough. I feel like you might need to win this pawn, but then you do allow knight a6 and the game keeps going. King f8 played. They each still have a bit of time. They've got a 30-second increment, so they're holding steady for now. I do like the instinct not to go here. This move suggests somebody who's going to get checkmated in the endgame, right? It's very, very close. So I'd be very concerned to see this kind of an instinct. After rook b7, maybe knight a6, bishop here, headed to f5 with rook h7 mate. Rook defense, knight b4. It looks really scary for black. So I do feel like king f8 makes the most sense. It's kind of a 3-result position, the way Rachel's playing it. We can say that for her for sure. If I were black, I don't even know if I would touch these pieces. At least it's hard for white to queen through them. I might just play bishop h4 here and start using my h-pawn. In which case, maybe the best thing white can do is rook h7 and eliminate that pawn, as Pizza Racer suggested. But okay, the knight comes out immediately. And yeah, bishop a6, rook a6 doesn't seem great. So I think you want to move the bishop to defend this pawn. So bishop c6, bishop c4, bishop d7 are all candidate moves at this point. Dabo says rook h7 is tricky. Oh, because after knight because you have this rook h8 threat. So the idea is if knight b4, king c4, you're attacking the knight and threatening rook h8. But when you go rook h7, black does have king g8 hitting the rook, and after rook h5, then knight b4. Feels not enough. King c4 played after a minute's thought. Wow, so she allows rook c8 but improves the king, but gets further away from this pawn, trying to hold everything together over here. But black could deal with these pawns with bishop e1 if they want to, but I'm sort of more scared of black just leaving the pawns there and doing their own thing on the king side. Bishop e1 might make the most sense, though, straight away. Just totally dealing with this stuff. Eight seconds, no, 38 seconds for Bloodqueen. She goes for knight b4. Wow, she's a little bit scared, giving respect to those past pawns. I feel like the knight on b8 was stopping them. She's spending her time coming out here. She's going to then play bishop e1 check and collect that one. With the king trapped on the back rank and opposite-colored bishops, I would think there's a very good chance white would save this, right? You go king b4, check. You move your king. They need the time to take this. And then you go rook h7, capturing that pawn. That's a draw. That's a draw. So this is the wrong response from Bloodqueen, in my opinion. And yeah, I think bishop e1 first without the knight sack. That looks like you could clean things up. My own first instinct here would be that bishop h4 would be enough to win here. I'm actually happy to just leave my knight on b8, stopping the passed pawns. King c4, good. Now white could play a6, so black has to take the pawn. Yeah, rook's a little bit better because the bishop can come here. And rook h7, it's pretty under control for white. I guess there's a little bit of trickery left. Rook h7 comes in. The trickery is you want the bishop here, but you can't move the king so easily. But bishop g5 lets the king go here. I was kind of worried about maybe the bishop coming back, trying to do this, but there's rook f5. Comes in time. Goes back to trying to trap the black king. So against f3, what was white's plan here? King b4, there's just bishop d2, right? And f2. Rook a1. Played quickly. She's got time on the clock. f3 looks really scary. They're too into pawn counts, you know. White's trying to equalize the pawn count instead of stopping this pawn from queening. Even after this tempo from rook a1, white doesn't do anything about that pawn. That pawn looks very good now. Yeah, in fact, yeah, black won the game. There's just no stopping it. Why this rook? ran away from... This was the only thing that could win the game. The d6 pawn was never going to win the game for black. White still ignores the pawn. Well, it was too late anyway, I guess. Ouch. Ouch. I'm Miraculous Chess. I agree with what Joe says. They both play the endgame very tactically and materialistically at the same time. It's like they sacrifice, but they're also really worried about the material count. You know, they're really thinking about it. They're making sacrifices, but then planning to catch back up. I don't know. Sacrificing is one way of being obsessed with material, in a way. Even though it seems like the opposite, but yeah, so White's just hoping to be able to sack the bishop for that pawn and then maybe play e5 at some point and trade the last pawn and get a draw. So we'll let them keep trying, even though it looks super busted. It's best for black not to play f1. Because White's nowhere near stopping this pawn. So as long as the pawn's on the board, you can play tactics where you attack the bishop, right? So rook d1 check, for example, the king has to be careful about where it goes to not block the bishop. So it's definitely good to leave that pawn on the board. This bishop could be improved, but we don't want to let this rook come here, so black's going to need to play some kind of king move at some point. I think rook d1 check first is mildly strong, getting the king away from e5, away from e3, away from this pawn. You know, it forces the king to c3, and then probably we lift up our king. Yeah, king e7, rook d7 makes no progress. So I think rook d1, king c3, and then king g7 or somewhere like that is the best we have. Rook a4. Oh, wow. Brilliant move. Brilliant move. Bravo to Anushka. Very nice. I hadn't found that one, but it's terrific. First of all, the bishop can't take because you queen. Second of all, by not queening, right, the king's not allowed to go on squares like d3. So the king still has to go to somewhere like c3, and she's going to clean up this pawn. She knows she can always come back around and turn that pawn into a queen. Very, very impressive understanding. So she gets rid of this pawn, so now white can never play e5 to trade that pawn. So now she has the time to go back to e1 and play f1. The game's over, right? Because white can't trade off the last pawn. It will always queen with the extra bishop. Oh, that was beautiful. Rook a4 to e4, nice. Fine by Bloodqueen, good. Alertness, good use of her time. She spent 2.5 minutes out of 3 minutes on the clock on this move. which was a great find. And she's got the 30-second increment. She'll build back time, but she doesn't need much more time after this one. One tricky detail, if like rook e6, you can't trade into the opposite colored bishop ending without rooks yet. That's just a draw. But in response to rook e6, black's got a very easy move, rook e1. You can't take it because of the pawn, and the rook fights for queening. And that shows why rooks on the board totally change opposite colored bishop endings, right? This would be dead drawn without the rooks, but with the rooks, there's all kinds of ways to break through. Lots of tactics can be used to overwhelm the blockading defenders. So this will not be the game where Rachel gets her therapy. She's going to have to keep going, which is okay. We have to work for it in chess. There are positions that you'll learn after 2 or 4 tries, but most of them are going to take you 8 to 10, so better get ready for that. There's rook e6 from Bloodqueen, from Rachel. A good try, but rook e1 will do it. Rook e1 will be kind of the final little precision here. Rook f4, bishop f1 looks unconvincing, so that doesn't seem right. All right. Rook a4 to e4 was brilliant. Does Anushka have the skills to finish this one? She does. Woo! Yep. That should do it. After that move, I would probably be ready to resign as white. Let's see if Rachel's got some more toughness than me. Does she see anything worth... any problems worth asking black? Oh, I think she's still playing a move. Rook a6. Yeah, so still playing. F1's definitely good enough here. They've got a 30-second increment. They started with 2 minutes. Is there anything better than f1? Another brilliant move like we saw before? I don't know. Getting too brilliant could be a mistake, because at some point white could go d6, rook a8 check. With the bishop and the pawn covering opposite color squares, you push the black king away, and then you're playing d7, d8 as white. So just as black was able to break through this pawn despite opposite colored bishops because of the presence of the rook, if black messes around too much, white's going to be able to do something similar with d6 and rook a8 and break through with the d pawn. But Bloodqueen has played another non-trivial move here. Rook e5, going after this pawn. If king c4, she takes it. If d6, she takes the bishop. And if king d4, maybe she's setting up for bringing the bishop around. Because the king needs to defend the pawn and stay off this bishop's diagonal. It's rather evil of her. She is giving white a chance to build like a final blockade though, right? Like white could do something like rook here, right? Preventing that. And here. And, you know, basically play this position now. King d4 played. bishop e3, and there goes the pawn. The rook gets control from behind! Rachel wakes up. I mean, she hasn't been, like, asleep at any point in this game, but I just felt her perk up. Like, oh, we're back in it. Oh, we are back in it. But the king's attacking the rook and the bishop's attacked by the rook. Has Anushka calculated all this? There's rook f3, right? And if you take here, then it's check and coming back. But rook f3, bishop d4 check, king c4 defending the bishop. This was a very, very risky way to try to convert it. I'm not yet sure if it's brilliancy or blunderacy. Rook f3. Okay. Rook f3 played. Miraculous Chess has a suggestion that after rook b5, rook check, king here, rook check, rook here is just winning. Wow. That's why we don't know if it's brilliant or not. Anushka's still calculating. Welcome to the dojo, 11 years. For the 10th time. Wow. Nobody would have thought that this position here, nobody would have thought that this should come down to some crazy 6-move tactical variation, right? Just for the record, folks, a more normal person than Anushka would have queened, right? And then just said, I'm up a bishop. Right? The rook comes here, the king's here to welcome the pawn. The bishop and pawn defend each other. There's no way to get rid of them. The victory is inevitable, right? Wait, white wins on time? That doesn't make sense. Isn't black winning on the board? Maybe.
Hello.
Hello.
It's a
Hello.
draw, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you play
anything
king
I could've
g7, it's a win.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
yeah,
because
yeah.
I can't take the bishop because of.
Yeah.
I was just surprised he didn't promote, but I don't know. Maybe I misevalued. I need
was
to go to the
getting too
bathroom. So I'm gonna
fancy.
be right back. Yeah,
Okay,
I thought you just promote and, I mean, I thought you just. I mean, I don't know. You only had one pawn, but I thought it was winning.
Yeah. I was trying to be too fancy, I think.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna be right back.
Yeah,
Okay.
Anushka, you were very, very fancy. And it was a mix of like brilliancy and really dancing with great risk, right?
Yeah.
Like rook a4 to e4, I didn't see that coming, and I think it was really excellent. But then sort of the opposite side of that is that after she played rook a6, you know, as Rachel said, she expected you to queen, and there's nothing left to say then, right? You're just up a bishop. There's nothing that can go wrong anymore because your king is in position to stop the d pawn. Your bishop's defending your last remaining pawn. It can never be stopped.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have much experience with this kind of an endgame, but once you have a certain experience, you know, like for you, having an endgame with king and queen against king is the same as checkmate in one, right? Like,
Yeah.
it makes no difference. You don't have to play a checkmate in one. If you see a way to be up a queen, you can just be up a queen, and it's over, right?
Yeah.
This position is similar. Like if an experienced player who knows this position sees it, they don't necessarily have to look if there's a mate in two or anything fancy, because it's the same as just like I have king and queen against king. It's just it's the end.
Yeah. Man, I felt like I yeah, I'm sad I ruined it. I thought I was playing pretty well for a while, but then
Yeah. I mean, it felt like white was in range for a draw when she got to the opposite colored bishop ending, but she played rook d7 going after your d pawn, and suddenly you're queening the f pawn and then finding a bunch of precise moves. So yeah, it is unfortunate, and I guess Rachel was saying that on the last move, if you'd played king g7 instead of king e7,
Yeah.
there's no rook takes bishop with check, and your crazy tactical thing works.
Yeah.
When you
Oh,
played
apparently
rook...
king e is still fine.
What's that?
Apparently king e7 is still fine.
It is still winning, yes, but who's telling you that? A computer engine?
Yeah, the computer engine.
Turn off your computer engine.
Sorry.
Anytime someone says apparently, it means they don't know the reason themselves.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Okay.
That's my bad.
So when you played rook e5 takes d5, you were envisioning some crazy tactical sequence like this where the bishop's hanging and the rooks are hanging and all this?
Yeah, I did not see the bishop being taken with check.
Mm-hmm.
It also took me a while to see that f6 was checked, but I was like, oh, that's fine.
Oh, that's fine, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, king g7 is easier because you attack the rook and there's no rook takes bishop check, right? So that's the end. But crazily, king e7 is also winning. So even after rook f3, you can still win with rook takes bishop check, king f6, walking into rook f3 check, rook f5.
Yeah.
The king's just one step.
Wait, sorry,
too
say
far
that
away.
again. Takes, and then, sorry.
King f.
Rook takes b.
Yeah, rook takes b5, rook takes e3, king f6, and white.
Oh, rook f5. Yeah. Okay, I see.
White can't avoid rook f5.
Wow.
Apparently people were yelling at their monitors. I'm sorry, guys.
That's okay. That just means that they're passionate about it, right?
Yeah.
So before we get into too much more chess, Rachel, how do you feel? Technically, you won on time here. Did that provide any therapy for you or no?
No.
No.
I think so there were a couple points where like I had almost calculated all the way through, but like I was getting there, and then I played a move where like a second later I was like, wait, like I calculated all of that just to realize that the first thing that I should do for all that to work is something else. So like for example, yeah, no, I was shocked she didn't queen, obviously. I was like, I don't know. So like for example, when she played bishop d4, I was like, okay, like the whole point of moving king d3 is that there's this idea of f4 and taking the bishop.
Right.
And I saw that this like rook was hanging, but I just like, I just kind of like, I wonder maybe like, I guess, I don't know, rook c1, c6, like takes, and then, maybe the bishop has time to get back. But I missed the fact that she could do that, and then yeah. So I was looking at it after, which was probably not ideal. Of like, oh, like seeing that this f4 idea works as long as the rook's not attacked. Like maybe I move the rook first,
Okay.
and the attack is strong, and she has to go back to, or I don't know. I was kind of regretting a little bit not moving the rook first. Even though it might be unclear.
In fact, I didn't think about it during the game, but since you bring it up, if you'd played rook c1 here, what would black play? I'm not even sure I see a defense of the c7 pawn.
Yeah.
Now that you bring it up.
I was thinking c6.
C6, okay.
Or yeah, I was looking at it after because I was like, yeah, what do they play? And
Right.
then I think takes, and then I have to move my bishop, my light square bishop, and then oh wait, I lose a pawn. Hold on. Yeah, wait,
What
hold on.
position
Yeah.
are we talking about?
Sorry,
I'm
never
lost.
mind.
We're talking about move 5, where Rachel played f4. And she realized that this f4 tactic might work if her rook were on any square other than g1.
Okay.
Then
c1, and I think I win.
So then she thought,
don't
maybe
know,
I could
I
play rook
miscalculated.
c1, and then next move I'll be able to play f4. But once she asked this question, I'm asking the question after rook c1, how does black defend the c pawn?
Yeah,
It
there's
seems
no
like
way.
you don't need
yeah.
f4 anymore.
Yeah.
No, that's
Yeah,
true.
no, I saw that like right after, and I was kind of upset. I was like, just spend like 10 more seconds. You could see that. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm dead here. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What? Ooh, that's a big jump that you're dead. I mean, there's still a bishop trapped on g3.
True. My
Alright.
my c pawn is dead.
Your
is
c
more
pawn,
accurate.
yeah, your c pawn looks like they've been tagged in the morgue.
Yeah.
But that's just the next phase in the battle, right? There's phases.
Yeah.
The game you just played had several phases, didn't it? There were 4 or 5 phases in the endgame you just played.
Very topsy-turvy.
Yeah. So here also, if rook c1 happens, I want you to get in the habit of not saying like, oh gosh, I missed this move, now I've lost, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
just the next phase. Now we're going to play this position where I'm down a pawn, but my opponent's bishop is bad on g3. I wonder who's better here and by how much and how it plays out and what's important. You know, you just keep finding the next thing and you keep going.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for like when I don't know, because it's happened like quite a few times, like during the sparring, where like, you know, I almost see something and then I play a move and then like right after I see it and then it's frustrating because it's like, you know, if I had just taken a little bit more time. So like, how do you know when you're like when you thought like when you're ready to play the move? You know, like, do you have any advice
Yeah.
for?
A lot of that stuff is just it slowly gets better. In other words, things about how much time to take, most of that is subconscious. It's just kind of learned, right? Because you could think an extra 10 seconds on each of your moves and then you'd probably just flag all your games, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, it's almost subconscious how we know when to make a move or when to stop and keep thinking. Sometimes it's related to your instinct and your calculation being at odds. So, you know, your instinct wants you to play f4, and then your calculation shows that it's losing, or vice versa, right? Like, you keep calculating f4, but your instinct's telling you, like, somehow this isn't going to work. Stop believing this, you know? So it's often on those points where you spend more time, or something where you know that this is the move that decides the whole game, you know, and then you spend more time. But most of how we use our time is more subconscious than conscious. But the other thing that helps is just getting a little bit better. As you get incrementally better, you'll just notice things 10 seconds sooner, right? So that's another thing you can do. You just get a little bit better, and like these ideas pop into your head a little bit faster, and so you're not risking your clock as badly before you have these thoughts.
Yeah, I think it just happened to me a lot, like now and in the tournament, where like I saw the problems with my move like before my opponent had even played anything, like very soon after.
Yeah.
Which is frustrating, obviously, because it's like, well, if you knew that, like I want to play the move and be like, you know, I'm confident in this move, and then, you know, have my opponent show me why I shouldn't be.
Right. It's a very bad feeling for yourself 5 seconds later to be able to tell you what a bad move it is. You're like, well, that's below my level then. I'm not learning what I need to learn from this mistake.
Yeah. No, then then I get really frustrated because I'm like, well, if I can see it already, then I'm not learning anything from, exactly.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's one solution to that. Everybody goes through that, and at all kinds of different levels, you know. So even at like a 2200 level, a 2200 is going to play a move sometimes and then notice something that they didn't notice 10 seconds before, 30 seconds before. It's going to happen to some extent at every level, and it's just, you know, the process of slowly getting better. And with more time, you always think of more things. Sometimes it's 5 seconds away, sometimes it's 5 minutes away, right? But you have to marshal your time, and you can't get upset and second guess yourself about those kind of mistakes, because they do have to happen, basically. They do have to happen to some extent, and it doesn't mean your time management was wrong necessarily.
Right.
In general, I think you're both using pretty decent time management. I think there may have been like a moment. I think there may have been one or two moments where each of you played a quick move when you had some time, but that's also like the 30-second increment's kind of tricky. You feel like you've got 6 seconds on the clock, but then you play a 2-move sequence, and then you don't realize you have a minute and a half, and you could think about the next move. So I feel like this game was very much a 3-result game where it was like a mess, and it didn't prove anything about who's better or worse, white or black, or anything like that. It felt like you each had your chances.
I feel like I need Endgame Sensei for this game. I feel like I need therapy.
You need therapy for the therapy game you just played for her?
This is because, okay, the way she was saying, like, this happened a lot to her in Chicago, this was every game for me in Chicago. Like, every single game, it was like, I had, like, decent time management, I thought. I mean, okay, this is all, like, what I think, so I could be wrong. Yeah. But, like, I felt like I had decent time management. I felt like I wasn't getting outplayed by these higher rateds. I felt like I was like finding good moves and like taking my time. And then there would be like one like sequence where I would just play too fast or like too much adrenaline or something would happen and I just black out and I looked at the position and I'm losing. And this was every single game. And I like don't know how to stop like losing like this basically.
Okay.
Yeah. That's also like that's a very emotional biased take obviously. So if you have a different perspective, I'll definitely take it.
Were you playing up a section?
Yeah, I was playing under 19 and I was 15 something. So
yeah.
But I mean, I wasn't playing up like insane. Like I would be playing like 1700s, which is not crazy.
Right. There's a chance that there was something more complicated going on in some of these games. So I'd have to look at them to give you any useful response to that. Yeah. So okay. But let's see. Let's try and ask one or two strategic questions about this game. Do you each feel like you have a third game in you still?
Yeah.
Okay. That was quick. All right. So h5, bishop a4. Can we get into why black didn't go knight f8 to g6, if that was kind of the plan that you were talking about between game 1 and 2?
Yeah, I didn't super like the idea of putting my knight on f4 for like anywhere where the bishop could take it, basically. Oh, okay, wait, sorry. Sack, thank you for the raid. I'll do a shout out. Yeah, I didn't like the idea of putting my knight where it could be traded. So that was basically all that went into my decision. And I felt like when I was playing as white, I thought the b4 pawn was like annoying to defend without losing my like potential to make a passer. So that's why I went for that. But the c pawn, like my king is too far away from the c pawn to like keep my rook from being able to go to c8.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Interesting. So you were less convinced about this knight f8 g6 plan, even though Rachel was pretty into it before.
Yeah, or I guess it didn't like feel intuitive to me. Maybe it was the best. I honestly just like once I had this position on my side, I like didn't even consider it.
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe that's a problem.
Rachel, I presume you expected knight f8 yourself from what we talked about before, and so knight b8 must have been a bit of a surprise for you. After knight b8, you took a minute and a half, which it's good to take time when you're surprised by a move. So that's very logical. You played bishop b5. Were you thinking of trading the knight if it ever comes out from b8? Like whichever way it goes, you want to trade it?
I wasn't sure. I mean, yeah, that's why I was like, okay, I need to move. I wanted to have the flexibility to do that if I had like with more time had decided that that's something I wanted to do. But I felt like if I didn't play bishop b5, I'm kind of committing to this like eternal like b4, either like the b4 weakness or allowing the knight to come to c5. And I guess I just wanted the flexibility to take if I wanted to. Yeah. But I was definitely thinking about it. I probably would have. But
you figured out knight a6 was coming, and you were like, I think maybe I might need to do this. Yeah. Okay. Let me give you a tiny puzzle here. Let's look at this position again after knight b8. Can either of you find a good move for white?
I mean, after knight b8.
Yeah. Not that bishop b5 was bad, but just let's take this as a puzzle. You know, is there any very good move for white?
Just rook c1, right?
6. Oh yeah.
Okay, rook c1. What would happen then?
I would lose my pawn.
Yeah.
Check. Very sad existence. Yeah, I don't know what I would do.
I did not see that. Yeah.
I think you both saw it during the game. You're more concentrated in the game than now. If you think back, what would black do after rook c1?
Rook c1.
Knight a6, b5,
Yeah.
and then knight c5.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's the plan, right? Is knight a6. So knight
Yeah.
a6 defends the pawn for the moment, and if b5 to win the pawn, there's knight c5,
Yeah.
which is fine. And if bishop b5, there's going to be some kind of complications, right? Knight takes b4 check. If the king attacks the knight, it blocks the rook, so you have at least some options, right? Like maybe bishop c5. Yeah, that looks pretty robust. Okay, so back to the position before bishop b5.
Yeah, bishop c5. Yeah.
So we play knight b8 for black, and let's keep looking for a good move for white. And for everyone in chat, or anybody watching this in the future as a video, you should be answering these questions as well as we go through them, right? Active learning. So any question I ask Anushka or Rachel, I'm asking you too.
So instead of rook c, after knight b8, instead of rook c1, there's something better.
Probably. Or after rook c1, knight a6, you need a better move than we played just yet.
Yeah.
The question for those of you who are passively here with us is what would be a good move for white here after knight b8?
I'm thinking maybe take g5 and f4. And just, I mean, it's a different plan, but like takes f4, and then if takes, and then you can play bishop h4, and your bishop is free.
Okay, takes f4. How does black take on f4?
Oh, sorry. That's, yeah, just e takes, and then I have no, yeah.
I was also looking at taking on g5 and then following it up with rook h1. But then h4, and then
yeah,
bishop
never mind.
h2,
I was not.
and then maybe like after rook g1, f4, like rook g1, king g6, f4, like, you know.
Right, so our bishop drops back to h2, and then you're hoping to bust back out with rook g1 and some kind of f4. Yeah. It's possible with the rook on a8 and knight on b8, right? You could definitely, depending how much time you had, you could try to calculate for something like this.
Yeah.
Right?
My pieces are so stupid.
Yeah. I mean, one concern is we are allowing bishop f2, which sort of prevents rook g1.
Oh, yeah, true.
So we would definitely have to calculate that as white.
Okay, never mind. I'm like king c4, king b5 or something, but I don't see a way. Yeah.
And when I was white in like a similar position, I guess the rook was on c8, but I was trying to make b5, b4 work. Also, my rook was on c1. Okay, basically that was like a completely different position. But,
you were trying to get white to push the b pawn up?
Yeah, and like trap a piece or like, you know, like pin a rook or something.
Do something genius, right? Something flashy and genius that messes with black.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Vague dreams of being a genius.
I mean, b5 just met with bishop c5.
Yep. And then what are we doing about our a pawn? Nothing, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's just kind of dead. Yeah.
I want to, in a non-bullying way, emphasize how much our own moves can sometimes be bad for us, right? Like our moves can actively destroy our own position, right? So a move like b5, giving black the c5 square for the bishop, that means we're not pressuring the c-file ever. Not that white's like strategically pressuring the c-file, but it's just gone as a tactical resource, right? It means our A pawn is sad and weak, right? So the moves we're playing, a lot of these F4 pawn sacks where black takes and our bishop goes to H2 and then they take on F2 as well. A lot of these moves we're killing ourselves, right? We're really, really ruining our own positions.
I don't see anything better than Rook C1.
I'm trying really hard. I'm really trying.
You don't see anything better than what was just said a moment ago?
Rook C1.
Rook C1. Okay. All right. Anybody in chat want to help them out then?
Is there something really stupid here that we're
I
not
think you also
seeing?
got a raid. Or I think Chess Dojo got a raid.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And
H1
thank you
chess.
for the raid, folks. I'm streaming together for the first time in my life, and I typed shout out and it didn't do a shout out, I don't think. So
Oh no, it should still work.
I'll figure it out one day. But my apologies and my thanks.
Oh, wow. Yeah, someone in the chat said it.
Oh wait,
Okay.
wait.
Rook H. Oh, sorry.
Well, there's only Rook H one Rook
Yeah.
H move, but
That's
that
really
exists.
nice.
Yeah.
Well, Rook H1 I looked at,
Yeah.
and then King G6, and then Bishop.
This is a Bishop E8, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You were getting close because you had looked at HG, FG, Rook H1.
Mm.
Right? And then H4 refutes it.
Mm.
Rook
Right?
H1 in honor of Rook H1 chess's raid.
But
Yeah, okay. Knight
Very
B8 was a
thematic.
bad move.
in 90+% of cases, Rook H1 before trading is going to be better.
Okay.
Like almost every time, just threatening HG. And your opponent has, not much to do about it here, right? So King G6, Bishop E8 is the crushing detail that really hurts for black. Maybe a plausible variation after Rook H1 that's complicated is Knight A6, H takes G, Knight B4 check. You can see that's complicated, but from the desperate position that white starts from, this is really plausible for white because you're going to lose 2 queenside pawns and capture 2 kingside pawns. It's an equal pawn trade, and it's activating the bishop on G3 and your rook. So, yay. Right? Now I will tell you that in your earlier games, there was also in each game a moment where Rook H1, I think, was a great move for white.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm surprised that we never had that idea
Yeah.
amongst both of these
In the very
games.
first game, there was a time where the black king wandered to E7, too far away from defending the H file, and white could play Rook H1 without trading, and black couldn't keep the white rook out of, H6 or H7 or something.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah. So, we've introduced that idea. Rook H1. And
Was
now...
H5, like, I played H5 because it was like what we talked about, but I didn't really like want to, and I don't know if but I wouldn't want to allow H5 from white. Like, I feel like if I allowed that, I would be really sad. But if I like playing H5 myself, I wasn't like super happy about that.
You weren't pumped.
Yeah, that was also my thought process. Like, I first thought of H5 when I was playing black, and I was like, I don't like this. But then I was like, okay, I wanted this knight maneuver, and then I didn't reach that last step of like, okay, in order for this knight maneuver to work, I need to play H5, and like, the H5 by itself looks bad, but H5 with the knight maneuver I thought was okay. But yeah, no, I had the same thoughts.
Yeah. Okay, so let's give Anushka white again.
Okay.
I should really learn how to like just type a challenge link.
Yeah, I wish that there was a way to like rematch but switch colors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's okay.
It used to be easier to type some commands in the console.
Yeah.
Before they had this chess.com/play, they had chess.com/live. I don't know if you two are too young to have seen that, but
No, I remember.
it was better. It was
Yeah.
like much better.
Back from
Are you
the
sending me a
Botas
challenge
live
link,
date.
Anushka?
Should be sent, yeah. 2:30 unrated. something something.
Oh, yeah, I got it. Okay.
Okay, Godspeed.
Very nice. All right, let's call up the next game. So they're still automatically going for this king d3 thing here, huh? Bishop a7. All right. In a certain sense, they're getting better, but in another sense, they also have more and more to think about as they discover stuff. So sometimes you'll actually play a little bit worse when you know a little bit too much. It can take a moment for it to come together. But we're getting into some real ideas here, you know. Now, what if we just play h5 immediately as white? Now, you know, never knight to g6, right? Yeah, Simply Strong. I think on the very first move of the game, rook h1 is my first instinct. My 100% first instinct, Simply Strong, is to start with rook h1 for white. You sort of pseudo-threaten rook h takes g. You probably make black play rook h8, freeing up your bishop from defending your a-pawn, you know. And then your rook's not on the diagonal with that bishop. You could play h5 at some point if you want. To me, rook h1 is the most obvious first move, actually. It's not a particularly crushing moment where black has no answer to it, but it looks like a really plausible first move for white. Okay. h5, we're going to see how it plays out once. A very quick h5 from white. Rook b8 from Rachel. And Anushka again playing a5, taking that square from the black pieces. But again, playing on the queen side, which means that if black's trying to play, you know, c5 or c6 or something, I don't know if white wants to move these things. Maybe white's worried about bishop c3 in some cases, actually. Yeah, 11 years. Maybe that's part of what's going on. So rook h1, could black have bishop c3 there? And I think the answer is no, h takes g is too good, right? This pawn's hanging. Rook to the 7th rank. You have to retreat to go defend the knight. Right? And I don't know. I almost feel like I could play a5, leaving both my pawns hanging to this bishop, and bishop a4. Looks exciting. So, yeah. King e3, bishop a7, h5, rook b8, a5, b5. Wow. So making the protected passer for white, but at least Rachel's immediately switched to playing on the queen side, which I think is the right side of the board for black, but this looks a little bit weird. Did she have a follow-up immediately? Oh, b5 even gives the move to white, so there is no immediate follow-up. Huh. What do we think of this move, chat? This b5 move? Gaining space on the queen side, I guess, but making this a passed pawn, not looking for any trades, leaving these pieces unhappy about white's restricting pawns. King c3 from white. Yeah. Weirdly, I was thinking maybe king d2 to not even get on the c file with the king. So you can play bishop d3 and maybe rook c1 faster. It's natural to stay near the action with your king, right? But here, for example, there's a chance that black could play c5, pawn takes, rook c8 because of the king's position, right? So, okay, black went for check. And I really wonder whether c5 might not have been a good move here. If white doesn't take it en passant, The idea is to take on b4, weakening the a pawn, king b4, bishop c5 check, you know, push the king back, and then use your pieces. And if d6, rook c8, check here, defend it, knight b8. Man, this is where you'd still want your pawn on h4, so you could go rook h1. It's where you'd want your king on d2, so you could play rook c1. Seems like black gets away with this, right? Like they're going to recapture this thing. Is there any way that white has some action on the file? Might be just enough to draw, right? The king has to come here, you trade everything, and then say that black won't be able to make progress. Maybe. Anyway, let's follow the game. Check, king b3, king over to e7. So, abandoning the king side, they're both going to go play on the queen side. Although this really favors white structurally, I think we might still see black get the upper hand because of the queen side is the correct side of the board for black to be playing on, in my opinion. But if white's just like so good on the light squares, they might be able to block the position off with just 2 pieces. Ten seconds for Rachel. Hopefully she knows. Yep. Plays a move. Plenty of time for Anushka. What does black want to do? Knight b8 to a6, or knight b8, king d7, c6. The b5 move is such an ugly move. I definitely don't like it. There's knight b8. At least Rachel knew what she had to do and got her time up from a few seconds to a minute. Rook c2. Just waiting, saying, yeah, I don't have to sack a piece. Good for you, Anushka. Good for you. Okay, black wants to play c6 or c5, perhaps. Or maybe I'm just imagining it because I would want to play a pawn break. I feel like I hate the move b5 so much that I have this strong instinct to apologize for Rachel for hating her move. But that just shows how much I don't like it. Is it white's turn? An interesting idea would be that the bishop can divert to this diagonal finally. Oh, and she does it. So now there's definitely a question whether c6 or c5 still work here. With the bishop coming from this new angle. Black could be quite pinned here, right? After something like here, takes, knight takes, check. The king has to keep the knight defended, so he goes there, and then does black have any way to defend this? I guess rook a7? And if bishop d5, rook a6. And then eventually king here. See, it's hard for 2 pieces to beat 3, no matter how much better placed they are. 20 seconds for Rachel. She goes for it. Now, my feeling is if white doesn't take en passant, then black just kind of takes over, right? Whether they take or push, either way, it feels like black's position gets too strong. Or they could play a move like knight a6, right? Just fighting over the tension. Now that white can't get to c6. So I guess you gotta take en passant. If you give the intermediate check on h3, you are not allowed to take en passant anymore. See? It won't let me do it. So it's got to be pawn takes pawn here. There we go. I calculated a6 for a moment. But the rook can come here, keeping these things defended. If a7, knight a7. And if bishop h3 check, the rook's defending the knight. So you don't walk into this pin and have this come in. That looks awkward. Maybe you could still make it work. But you can also just sort of step away at this point, not get tied up. The knight's dealing with the pawn. It's all good. So check king here. Bishop simply goes back. Okay, just pinning the knight and then immobilizing the rook. Interesting concept. I like seeing Anushka playing some more patient and waiting moves this game. I do see a real change in the attitude already, where she's willing to just keep Rachel from doing things instead of always trying to do something dramatic herself. I definitely feel a change there. Carl's asking about this idea of putting the rook on a2. Black's got a7 so well defended. I can't help but be drawn to trying to use this a pawn as an asset, Carl, but I think actually we should just leave it here where it's strongest and try to keep black from improving their pieces. Kind of like what she's doing, you know, bishop h3, bishop f1. Here is like an interesting idea that's similar. Bishop here, threatening bishop d5. Only move we saw was rook a7. And then you could come back like this, with the idea that, you know, if ever rook a6, you come here. If king d7, you play bishop d7. Kind of similar idea, right? Just how does black untangle it all? King d7, you just give check. Ah, she doesn't repeat. Come on, Anushka. She's thinking about winning. She's laughing at herself for thinking about winning. Come on, just repeat positions, try and get a draw with white. You know, be content. Be reasonable. Lost kid with the Gukesh heads. Yes, Bloodqueen is a Gukesh head in the sense of obsessed with winning versus trying to draw when you need to. So rook a7 is correct. Tactically forced. The rook can come and defend the knight there. It does feel like white's bishop is amazing. Well, you know which one I'm talking about. One of them's not amazing. This might be the kind of position where white could play this maneuver we've never seen from either of them yet. Bishop h2 to g1, and then f4, and when black takes, f3, letting the bishop out. But will we be able to play f3? Maybe just sitting is still correct, right? Yeah, there you go. This kind of a thing. Just sitting around, you know? Rook here, now come here and here. Oh, that was a while ago, Joe. Perhaps yes. Okay, bishop d5. Just you know, tying black up, waiting to see what they want to do. The black pieces can't move super easily. A g4 move from black, sacking a pawn, you mean? It's not really the kind of position where I want to sack anything. King d7's kind of the only move for black, yeah, they play it. This is a stay calm and hold it together kind of position for white. Let black get low on time, trying to find some way to untangle. In this position here, if black plays knight a7, white would have bishop b7 trapping the rook. So none of these pieces can move yet. Black's not threatening anything. You just bang out rook c2. Yes! Rook c2. And make your opponent work. You know, make the opponent work. There is a question, can white draw by trading everything on a6? On c6? I don't really want to find out. I just want to hold it together. Knight e7. Yes, an annoying move. We might have to go bishop b7, a6 here. Yeah, she tries it. Now black needs to attack these with the knight. And if they do, they could win. But if they can't, the rook's trapped. You know, just as bad as the bishop on g3. And when you maneuver the knight around to do something, white's going to have a chance to try and bring their rook into c6 or c8, or even just bishop b5 check, bishop c6 check, bishop takes b5. There's an example of me going faster than I can speak. I'm saying bishop b5 check because I mean bishop c6 check, bishop takes b5. Maybe white just needs to sit around. Maybe they can't make any progress. This is by far the best either of them have played the white side yet today. Clearly, right? It's not that necessarily every move is perfection or something like that. I don't know what perfection is. But we can feel a totally different attitude and approach from Bloodqueen this game, right? Just so much more willing to make life hard for the opponent instead of doing crazy stuff. No, I don't think so, Simply Strong. We've got a big shared chat room, I think is the idea here. All right, f5, trying to bust out, trying to do something, and it maybe threatens f4, bishop h2, though it's not 100% clear how big a threat that is. She had 9 seconds when she let that one fly. Against e takes f5, is she planning to play knight f5 and allow bishop c6 to b5? No, there's bishop c8. There's no way she's planning to allow bishop c8, right? That's an impossible. f5 taken. Somehow they're both laughing at the same time. Now white also has the idea of playing f6 next. Oh my goodness. There is some chance that white could win this game. That being tough in the face of your opponent trying to win could actually lead to you winning instead of just drawing. Right? And white's got a big time advantage. f6 looks quite scary here. Where does the knight even go? We know it can't go to f5. It still can't go to f5 because of bishop c8 check. And if it goes to g8, then f7 queens. The knight's trapped. Yeah. White's going to win a game, folks. White's going to win a game. And part of it is the clock. Black had 9 seconds on the clock when she chose to play f5, right? Where she could have been playing bishop b6, bishop d4 probably here. And there we go, a first point for white.
Hello.
Hello.
I blundered. I should have just played bishop
Sorry.
b6. No, it's fine. I mean, yeah, should have just played bishop b6, but I just handled this whole thing terribly. So, yeah.
Did
I don't know what be.
two feel any big difference in this game compared to the previous ones?
Yeah, I think the other two were okay. I think this one was not good at all. Yeah.
I think getting in h5, like before all of the nonsense was good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I still felt like the best I could probably do was a draw though, especially after c5. c5 looked like it shouldn't be good, but it ended up being fine, I think. Like, probably could have, yeah.
I don't know, because I think after c5, like, you kind of did, like, you know, maybe when we got to the point, like, right before I played f5, I could have played, like, I don't know, just move the bishop around between, like, b6 and d4. I don't know exactly how you're going to proceed, but I don't know. I think I'm already not doing well there. I think that I don't really know.
Instead
What were you
of,
saying?
instead of knight e7, I thought you were going to go knight d8, and then I don't have bishop b7. So that was the point in the game where I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Because then my bishop kind of dominated.
Oh. Yeah. No, you're right. I should have done that.
Maybe, Anushka, you could keep doing what you'd been doing so well so far this game.
Which is what? Was that a question?
Rook c1, rook c2?
Oh yeah, rook c1, rook c2. That felt good. Especially if I ever need to swing over to the A file. Yeah.
I mean, you may think I'm a total weirdo for this, but I'm really excited to see you playing rook c1 and rook c2 this game.
Okay.
I mean, did you feel how much harder that made the game for Rachel than the two previous games where white tried doing things?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
You start playing
I
Rook
think
C1, Rook C2, and suddenly she's like flagging and you know. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely better
And I
than Rook D1 last game before anything.
yeah. The lesson didn't soak in for me. I mean, I could just chill also, but I didn't do that.
You could chill also, but you're the one who's trying to prove you're winning with black, right?
Yeah.
So the chilling is not completely symmetrical, right? Like if you chill and she just says Rook C1, Rook C2, I mean, are you willing to give her a draw?
Raw. Yeah.
And if so, you know, she's the one who's pumped, right? She's got that bishop on G3 and she just made a draw. So I thought there was a huge difference, I felt, in that compared to the previous ones, which was it was like the first game where the player playing white seemed to be willing to sit there and let black come up with something and then just try and make the things black comes up with hard to do. You know? And like when she played bishop h3, bishop back to f1, bishop to h3, I know you each think that like doing something spectacular and forward moving is brilliant and that going back and forth isn't brilliant. But when she's going bishop h3, bishop back to f1, and you're like, oh shoot, I have to defend my b pawn with my rook, and then she goes bishop h3 to e6, I have to bring the rook to a6. You know, she's just not letting you untangle. She's just frustrating you. And that it seemed really powerful to me. Felt like a huge difference.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Okay, so that's the thing I'm excited about. Your thoughts on h5 for white? Do you both feel like that's a good move at this point?
Yeah, I think so. I think it just closes down the kingside potential.
Mm-hmm. Anything that black could try differently in your next game, I guess? Do either of you have an idea for Bloodqueen in game 4 if white kicks off the game with king d3 h5 like this? Like, do you guys have any other suggestions what white could try? What black could try?
Not sure. Maybe just c6 right away.
Okay. That could be a whole
But
new
then,
approach to the game, right? c6.
Yeah.
Or like Rook C8 and C6.
Mm-hmm. Right? Or rook c8 with the same plan. So that's a matter of calculating some little details and seeing what changes what.
Yeah.
What do you think, Anushka? Do you see anything other than c6?
I guess if white goes a5 again.
Then what?
I don't know. In both of our games, also like we play king d3 and then bishop a7.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of just did that because Rachel did that.
Okay.
But I don't know why we're doing that. And also I don't think I'm gonna do that again because the first time I had black, like she played king d3 and I was like, okay, bishop a7, and then I sat there and I looked at the position for like 2 seconds and I was like what like why did I do that?
I think you each at first approached this looking at f4, like you were sort of semi-desperate for white, semi-brilliancy seeking. So I think you were both thinking at first that king d3 is kind of threatening f4. But then you had a game where you got where Rachel tried f4 and got rook c1, c7. It was really messy. And afterwards, she was calculating it a little bit more soberly and saying, well, I don't know if with the rook on g1, f4 is actually sound, right? So if I play like rook a7 for black just to mark time, f4, g takes f4, bishop takes f4, bishop f2. You know, we don't know if that works out for white or not.
Yeah.
So it's not clear that bishop a7 is forced. No. It's been played a few times, but it might not be forced.
Yeah. I might wait until f4 is a threat then as black.
Okay.
This time.
All right. So yeah, so one thing you could do is not play bishop a7. And do you have any, like, do you feel like you want to try preventing h5 by playing it yourself, or do you want to allow h5 and go for c6 or some other kind of play?
Thinking about it. I think I'd want to play h5, at least instead of bishop a7, and then figure it out from there. Because I think the only game where h5 was played as black was the one that I lost, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I like the position that I got, so I think I'll do that again.
Yeah. Now, let's say that Rachel also extrapolates that king d3 doesn't necessarily threaten f4, and she says, well, I've got the first move. I play h5 on move 1.
Yeah.
Then maybe you'll be playing c6, or is there another plan here?
I might do that, to be honest.
Some people in chat were wondering if you guys were playing king d3 to stop bishop c3.
Yeah, that was my
point. If you feel like white needs to play king d3, maybe.
How else defend pawn, other than give up c5 square? Though.
Right, h5 bishop c3 b5 looks pretty awful.
Yeah.
Now, like, both our bishops are stupid.
Yeah, I don't think that can.
Rook b1.
Rook b1 to b3.
Yeah, maybe it can be held on to.
Or rook b1 king d3. Maybe not rook b3. I don't know. Rook b3 is a little awkward.
Yeah. It is like there's only so many moves that you can waste before h5 is played. So yeah, it's definitely like a race.
I think one of our big questions is definitely, do both players want to play h5? Is it like a race to play h5? Very big question. It was not my first instinct that either player would want to play h5 when you set off on the first game. It was not on my radar. And it's kind of like in how some video games there are metas, right? Where it's like, oh, this thing, everyone starts valuing a certain thing and then they're rushing for it more and more. And it's not necessarily what you thought the most important thing was. Like, oh, the center, we need to get our pawns into the center as soon as possible. Or, oh, we need to get a rook to the queen side. And suddenly it's this h5 move. And I had generally thought that white would want to put the rook on h1 and just always be threatening hg and sort of keep black honest with that. That was my first instinct to this position. All right, should we play one last game for tonight?
Yeah.
All right. I do feel like we're still a long way from a conclusion, but we're learning things.
Yeah.
This was a really good sparring position that you picked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That Rachel that we kind of worked on together.
Yeah, I was talking to Rachel. I guess we took Brooks off, so it's different.
Yeah.
But
it was the only endgame I had, so.
Yeah.
Well, it was a good one.
And if other folks watching only learn one thing, one of the most important things for them to learn is how to pick a position that's useful for them to spar, right? Because they might not be interested in Capablanca Winter the way Anushka and Rachel got so excited to find that, they were playing Capablanca Winter 100 years later. But if you all know how to go through a game of yours and pick your own position that's relevant to you to spar, beautiful.
Okay. I'll set up a challenge. Okay.
Not really sure what my plan is going to be, to be honest.
Maybe think about it before I send so that it doesn't like auto abort. Like we can just like sit and think.
Yeah, for sure. You are both opponents and teammates when you are sparring with somebody else, folks.
It's interesting. I said this when I was muted, but I feel like I don't usually feel that competitive with Rachel, and I don't usually want to because I like that we're friends, but this is the first like position that or like thing that we did where I'm starting to feel really competitive. I don't know how I feel about it, but I'm just gonna
Yeah.
put it out into the universe and say, I still love you.
It's okay. No, I think it's good. I think a healthy amount of competition is good that we push each other.
Yeah.
And if you compare it to other competition, when you win a game, your first thing you're saying when you come back on the mic is sorry, which is probably not the first thing you say in tournaments to other competitors, right? So it's like it's a funny in between space.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. Are we ready?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I'll send it.
Best friends are so sweet. Rachel's lucky. I am lucky. I agree.
Hmm.
All right, you know what? Bam.
Mute yourself, woman.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
All right.
I
Well, I'll mute.
forgot.
Well, I'll mute. She's happy about her move, so we're going to find out what Rachel's move was. The move that made her say, you know what, bam. Let's have a look. What was bam? It was immediate h5, allowing bishop c3, 0.1 seconds on the first two moves each, so they'd figured out what they wanted to go for here. They figured out what was next up. And sparring partners are off. They're ready to compete respectfully. Rook b1, holding it together, and white wants the next, king d3, dig that bishop out, keep control of the dark squares. They both understand very clearly, so it hasn't really been mentioned much today, but they both understand very clearly that white does not want to give all these dark squares to the two black pieces to play freely on the queen side. They'll just move all around white's pawn structure, victimize the bishop and the a pawn. It'd be very easy for black to win on the queen side if white ever plays b5. So knight b6 a5 doesn't seem to help black. Okay, she's come up with something. She's played knight b6. Okay, maybe I'm missing something. A very tactical move from Anushka. What's she up to? Because in general, they've enjoyed playing a5 from white's side. Huh. White can also play king d3 first, sort of forcing the bishop back, and then a5. Then you don't even have to calculate knight c4, although my calculation of knight c4 said that the king attacks two pieces and, wins the game. After knight a3, for example, you just take. I do not get it. What's Anushka up to? They've both been playing a5 for white. So why did she do this one? She's trying to get on some different itinerary with knight c8, knight e7, or knight a7 quickly. Get out of the range of the pawn structure that restrains the knight when it's here. There's a5. Rachel was properly respectful and suspicious here. She spent a minute 40 before playing a5. If they didn't know that the opponent was strong and understood the position and been playing it back and forth with them, in a first game, if your opponent played knight b6, you'd be tempted to say blunder. I just bang out a5, right? But both myself and Rachel had the instinct of respecting Anushka and really thinking why did she do this? What has she got up her sleeve here? We each really had that instinct, and it's the much better instinct to have in a game, is the respectful versus disrespectful instincts, so to speak, when your opponent plays a move which surprises you and looks like on the surface it allows you to simply improve your position. And if their move's really bad, having spent a little bit of time being respectful doesn't generally hurt you, But yeah, I still haven't figured out what Anushka was up to. Eventually, you have to move as white. I don't know if Rachel figured it out. My best bet is that the idea is that the knight will be better on e7 than on d7, because from here it'll fight for some light square pawn breaks and pressure white's center when black makes the pawn breaks. $30 though. Anushka not following up quickly or confidently her knight b6 move. Ay. Deep time pressure immediately. And a piece sack. What? Rook b4, rook a5 could be defensible. But if a takes b6, it almost seems even worse. Because then your structure gets shattered too. Rook b4, rook a5, bishop d3. f5. Yeah, so now black's the one who should be defending, because white's got 2 pieces against 1. But we see black, reacting by stirring the pot. F5 might be the move that loses the game by doing something, right? For all we know, the position is still drawn with this bishop trapped over here. To get it out, white would have to sack at least 1 pawn, we know, which would be 3 pawns for the piece. But with f5, I don't know, maybe white can take, and then against knight d5, have rook b7, and then we've got this f pawn as kind of a threat. The code thinks it was completely lost if she took the knight. I also thought this was more crushing somehow. This is still hanging. And then if you move it, takes... I guess you have to keep white's rook out no matter what. White has a rook here, right? And defending that pawn. And then eventually this. Oh no, I can't play bishop a6. Bishop a4, keeping the king at bay. b5. Careful now. Bishop here. And if king here, you can always check him away. Yeah, and otherwise this. Yeah, I also think pawn takes b6 was just winning, I think. I don't know. Rook takes. Rook b6. Pawn takes b6, bishop c4 wins. Rook b6, rook d3. Rook b7, rook c3. Rook b6, rook d3, king d3, pawn takes, king here. Doesn't feel like you're going to win that endgame with the bishop trapped, but maybe. Rook b6, rook d3. Rachel's going low on time. Rook b6, rook d3, king d3, cb6, king c4. b5 check? No. Maybe the bishop eventually wins with rook takes b6. Woo! Excitement, f4. With 4 seconds on the clock, it's still a good skill test to play this out, in my opinion. I did tell Bloodqueen in chat, because she said, I think I may have blundered in chat. I did say you can resign in sparring. If you ever feel like the position's not worth sparring out because of some blunder, then you can always just resign. But right now I feel like it looks like still like a pretty good skill test for them. So I wouldn't advocate resigning, but you are allowed to. This bishop's still going to have a hard time getting out. I think rook takes b6 was winning, by the way, for those in chat saying it was winning. I don't know 100% though. The calculation is more than a 1 minute calculation to be sure of it. So it's tough to do when you're low on time. That's part of the skill check here. So here white has this idea of f3, bishop g1. If you go bishop g1 first, there might be rook a1. If you go f3 first, rook a2, you do have bishop c2, I think. Although maybe knight d5, d3. Knight d5, rook b7, knight e3, rook c7, check is winning for white. Okay. So this, I'll just show on the board what I just mentioned. Calculation-wise, knight e3 coming in here with this and this threat. But there's rook check, defending the bishop while checking. And then wherever the king moves, you can get the bishop out of the way of knight f1. And that's winning for white. F3 was the choice. Good choice from Rachel, I think. Snowflake must be talking to Rachel in Rachel's chat, saying you could have played rook takes b6, bishop c4. Rachel seems to have read the chat and grabbed her head in agony or something. It was a tricky thing to calculate. But she should stay focused on the current position. Material count 3 pawns against a piece, right? White sacked a pawn with f4 to have a route out for this piece. So the game should remain, or is potentially competitive right here, right? As black prepares to move the knight without allowing rook b7. But after bishop g1, how do you move anything? Don't tell me she's playing bishop g1, knight d5. That's way too tactical. Bishop c4 should be a win. Bishop g1 played. Sleepy Dreamer points out that bishop just saw some light for the first time today. We've had 4 games, and it's the first time that this bishop saw an actual diagonal. Even the one game that white won, the bishop was still trapped back here, and white actually just won with the f-pawn, and the other pieces being well placed. Knight d5, trying to get out of bishop a7, knight b4 has some hope, but I think bishop c4 is game ending. You know, maybe you go rook a5, rook b7. 30 seconds for Rachel. Bishop c. Is there any move even better looking than bishop c4? Like, does rook b5 win harder? Rook b5, rook a2 check. Doesn't feel crushing. Rook b5, c5. Well, then there's bishop c4. But yeah, bishop c4, rook a5 looks clearest. Yeah, she goes for it. 9 seconds left, using every drop of time and concentration that she's got to play this endgame the best she can. And rook a5 is the only move I saw here. Most other moves are answered by bishop takes rook. Rook a2 is also answered by bishop takes rook, just a different bishop. c6, bishop a7. Okay. Okay. All right. So now, Rachel, you have won a game with white in this endgame.
Yeah, I think it's just hard because I feel like once we sack, it becomes a completely different mentality. Like, I think the mentality of keeping just like, just I mean, I just say just chilling. I feel like there's a better way to say it, but like, the mentality of just like, not just we don't have a plan. They don't have a plan and just kind of like hanging out. It's just blown out like immediately out the window as soon as something is sacked.
Yeah.
So I feel like the main point I feel like the main point that you've been trying to get across kind of isn't relevant as soon as the sack happens.
Kind of. Yeah, maybe not.
At least yeah.
But part of what we've seen is like most of the sacks have not really worked today, right? Like,
yeah.
The player being like more desperate is often. Right. Yes, Anushka?
I would just like to say that that was a really bad game. And I'm aware that I blundered like 7 times, and one of them caught up with me. So
1 of 7.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
It wasn't a great game for me either, but
yeah, I think we're just tired.
But,
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that was. I don't even know what to say. Sorry.
I thought after a5 your knight had to go back.
It did.
Yeah.
Okay.
You could have taken my knight, and I was losing.
And then my plan was to just chill from there and just keep everything there and just play like move my rook around or something.
You were gonna chill.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
On move 2, I miscalculated something, and that's why after you played a5, I literally thought until I had 7 seconds left, and I like played something random, and I totally thought you were gonna take my knight, but then I'm like a cockroach, and then there was like rook takes b6, and I thought there was rook takes d3, but then like you can take like all of my pawns, and but then right. I'm still like a cockroach, and then I gave some checks and I really had no idea what I was doing, and eventually I like blundered so badly that my pieces were also so bad the whole game. Like the bishops were like really, bishop pairing.
Yeah. I mean, to some extent, it still looks sort of competitive for a while, right? Despite your feeling of like a cascade of blunders. I mean, it's 3 pawns against a bishop, like.
Yeah. I mean, the way it happened was okay, but. I didn't play that well at all. Yeah. So. Yeah.
I was kind of beating myself up too because like bishop c4 is like an immediate thing you see, and so the fact like I didn't consider even like the knight takes b6 line the rook takes b6 line until I saw it in the chat a couple moves later, and I was like, why did I not see that? Like, of course, or if you remove the defender of the c4 square. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I didn't go too deep into it because it was already after the fact, but I was kind of sad that I didn't see that.
Yeah. So some notes about the sparring process versus the position and the game, right? First of all, if you play a bunch of sparring games, there will be mistakes and blunders, right, that decide the game sometimes. That is part of developing our endgame skills. There are certain like endgame patterns and tactics and things that are going to come up and be useful, right? Like a game you had a couple games ago that got into a opposite bishop position where the f pawn was threatening to queen, right? That's a game where at some point Rachel could go back and be like, oh wow, I had a rook on the h file and I played like rook h7 to d7 to take a d6 pawn, allowing Anushka to just queen the f pawn, right? Like that's not good opposite colored bishop technique or whatever. I didn't need that d6 pawn, right? So you could say, oh, there's like a blunder, whatever. It doesn't necessarily mar the games though, right? It's like part of the process is learning some strategic ideas about a certain position, right? Like, oh, is h5 good for white or for black or whatever, right? Okay. But getting caught up in that doesn't mean that all the tactics and stuff is irrelevant. That's still part of the point of what you're practicing as well. It's just, how am I going to react if I end up in a position with knight against 3 pawns or bishop against 3 pawns? Or what am I going to do when things get all scuffed, Or when my opponent makes a mistake and I get into this opposite colored bishop position, right? Like, how am I going to handle each of these scenarios? That's a big piece of what we are training. It's just all those little practical skills that are going to come up. Second note about this is if you have a terrible blunder on one of the first like 2 or 3 moves, you can always just like say, oh, let's start over, right? Whether you're doing it online or in person, you can always do that. You don't have to. If you think, hey, I blundered horribly, and yet, from my understanding of this endgame, it's still interesting to see how it plays out with all these pawns against the piece, you can keep playing, right? So I wasn't saying you should resign to save time. I was saying you can. It is always an option, right?
Okay. That's what I wanted to do, but I thought that would be lame because, yeah. But like looking at this now, like I would,
Yeah.
It would be nice to not blunder.
Yeah, I mean it's not really about lame, not lame. You're literally kind of maximizing your training time while also trying to just build up the best skills you can for yourself. So if you want to build on your, toughness or your cockroach attributes for your tournaments, then you just hang in there and don't resign because that's part of what you're working on, right? And if you already feel very confident that in a game you will cling on and you will keep it alive forever and just keep not resigning, and you have confidence in that part of your game, and you just want to say, oh, I want to try a different variation, it doesn't cost you anything 45 seconds into a game to say, never mind, let's try this other variation instead.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah. So it's flexible in that sense. You don't owe something to your opponent, I don't think, in some specific way. I mean, you do have like an agreement together, you have a responsibility to each other, training together, but you don't have a responsibility like, here I have to resign or here I have to play it out. Like, you have to make those judgments yourself as to like what's a good use of your training time, and just sort of trust each other and work together well. Jesse's always telling me to resign when I play this Endgame Sensei with Kostya. Anushka, if you watched a couple episodes, I'm sure you've heard him tell me to
give it up, Pruess.
Give it up, Pruess. Whether it's like agree to a draw or resign, he always wants me to stop playing or trying. But in my mind, I'm making the best use of Kostya and Mai's time, but I don't really care if Jesse's like annoyed. So I would say you don't need to worry about me or chat or anything like that when you're making those choices. Really between you and your training partner, what you think is going to be a good use of your time together. And I thought it was still somewhat interesting, but we may have reached a point where you're so tired that it's not worth pushing further tonight for sure, which is fine. But hopefully we got something out of these games.
Yeah, I think so. I want to explore this position again. I'm like really like revved up about this position. Yeah.
That's excellent.
No, I mean, just the mentality is not something that I've had before, so I can definitely think of other scenarios where if I had the mentality of like, I have no plan and I can't make any progress, but maybe if I just hang out, then they can't make a plan either. Yeah, I think that I will definitely use this for my future games. I think I could have applied it to other games in my tournament, and I think that it would have made a big difference.
Yeah.
Rather than just like, I think sometimes I like my mentality. I'm like, oh, I'm losing. Like, I need to create a counterattack to try to come back, and then that counterattack ends up just like, just like I just lose outright instead of having to grind me out all the way, and maybe I hang on. I'm like, oh, I need to counter because I'm like I have nothing to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a huge mentality shift for me after today. So thank you.
Yeah, totally. You think the bishop g3 is going to drag you down eventually, so you just cut off one of your own hands.
That was my exact thing. I was like, I need to do something to like which is not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are situations in chess where one does need to do something, like, if your opponent had literally already captured that bishop, then maybe you throw a last-ditch attack at their king, right? But here we're seeing it's a little bit more... It at least takes a certain degree of skill for black to try and prove how bad the bishop is. And so you have a choice of how to skill check your opponent, right? Play a couple crazy moves and see if they handle it, or see if they can come up with a 20-move plan and handle every detail that comes out later. Okay, good stuff. We will do this again. Obviously, you can play this position against each other 100 times without me as well, right? And figure some things out. Maybe I'll throw one tidbit out in the open before leaving you. Just one more piece of food for thought. In general, my first understanding of how to play against a bad bishop on g3 as black would be to play on the queen side where white's missing a piece and the piece can't get there. But you each seem to have the instinct of trying to make progress on the king side as black, and each of you with white was trying to do stuff on the queen side with white, which I thought should eventually just go to black's advantage. Like, everything white accomplishes on the queen side should normally just lead to black then winning on the queen side with their extra piece. So I had a certain feeling like you were each playing on the wrong side of the board with each color. It's my last big picture thought. Despite that one interesting detail, there was a game where white played with b4 and a5 and black played c6, and white with rook and one bishop defeated black's rook, bishop, and knight on the queen side, right? We had one game like that, a really nice game from Anushka, right? Where she was just restraining what Rachel could do. She had a good pawn structure of pawns, controlling some dark squares. And with two well-placed pieces, she was able to hold off three pieces and then eventually win when Rachel got low on time. So there will be exceptions, even if I'm right about which side of the board should be the first place you look. Or I'm totally wrong. Don't necessarily believe me, but just give you that seed in case you practice this a bunch of times without me. Maybe you could look to different sides of the board and see what you think.
Okay.
We'll definitely spar this some more, I think.
Yeah.
Especially if Anushka's like, I want to spar, then I'm also just as down to spar. Because I'm kind of surprised that, like, we've been going at it for almost 3 hours and that never crossed my mind. And I'm like, why? I was just kind of basing the whole position off that pre-existing condition of like king side versus queen side. I'm like, why didn't I, take that even a step farther back and like question that?
Yeah, because it looks like white's winning with the pawns. So it looks like white should, like, the plan is queen the pawns, but yeah, you're down a piece.
Yeah, I had a lot of people in chat, I noticed, as you were playing, like, asking, what about b5 and a6 for white? And I'm like, then eventually you've got a pawn that black rounds up with their extra piece on that side, right? So, other point is, when you spar, just a quick reminder that you can always change the time controls, right? So if you're trying to get in more games or less games, right? Just Rachel mentioning that you've been going for 3 hours. Wanted to just throw that reminder out to you and to everybody. Depending on how many games you want to get in, you can try different time controls. You can try, resigning or agreeing to draws faster to get more reps of the beginning, if the beginning's more interesting to you or whatever. It's all yours to adapt. And the more you've done it, the more you'll make efficient decisions around how you're deploying your time. But yeah, it's all flexible. All right. Great job. Good competition and friending.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to say one other thing too. I think it's like I haven't looked at this position with the engine like for at the Fen or like whatever.
Hmm.
I still haven't. And I think that is why I'm still interested in the position because like there's like what we think is white's first best move and then what we think is
Hmm.
black's first best move. So it's like the process of checking with the engine, but like instead of taking 2 seconds, it takes 3 hours and like we're finding it
Hmm.
ourselves. And like there's like you can go on until the end of the game.
Hmm.
And like yeah, that
Right,
was
like
cool.
if you turned on the engine, it told you that H5 is the best first move for white.
Yeah.
Then you'd
Ruins
be
it.
less
Yeah.
interested in the next 6 games you were potentially going to play with Rachel suddenly, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're no longer investigating a question. The science is kind of taken out in a sense.
Yeah. Like we
Yeah.
played 5 games and we were still like Rachel was still like, I don't know if I'm gonna play like King D3 first or H5 first, and then she played it and I was like, okay, like I gotta like well, I blundered it, immediately, but like in my mind I was like, I gotta lock in.
Yeah.
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 I mean, ever since you said last time that you're like, I don't use engine, I'm like, I should not be, like for Chicago Open, I haven't put anything in the engine. And I want, there are positions that I want to just like treat as a study and just kind of look at. Like there's one position where my opponent spent like 40 minutes on the move he did, which like, other people were saying was warranted. And, I accidentally, I was putting it in and then like accidentally the engine happened to be on. And then even just for like a split second to see of like, who was winning, I was like, oh, like I wish I didn't, and I'm still interested, but like,
Yeah.
I totally agree. Like I would love
Yeah.
to just like figure it out myself. And I feel like that's how you get better. And the engine just kind of kills that curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Become based in Dojo pilled. Nightbot is correct. I'm gonna say this to myself so that everyone
Okay.
Yeah.
there we go.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So it seems like you both have bought into that aspect of our training. You can feel it, so it's great. I look forward to looking over your Chicago games, which I didn't get a chance to do yet today, but I will have a look. And
I will send you mine as
yeah.
well. I haven't even input them all yet, but yeah, I'm gonna try to input also like the lines I was calculating, like the concrete ones that I remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That I don't know could be helpful in like what I'm noticing when I'm not. Yeah.
My games are very bad. I'm just gonna warn you before you look
Yeah.
at them. So like, they're
Yeah.
just they're
I'm
painful
sorry.
for me to look at. It's okay.
I'm sorry. But that
I
does
mean, I
happen.
tried. Yeah, I tried as hard as I possibly could, but
Good.
yeah.
And did you have fun anyway?
Yeah, I'm glad we all went together. Otherwise, I would have had like a much worse time.
Mm-hmm.
But it was nice because we could go back and we could like hang out and play with the dog.
It's good too that you didn't just like give up. I don't know, because I think I don't know. It's pretty early on. I played someone where like you could tell, like immediately that like he like didn't want to be there. And so like I won. I won pretty fast. And like just like played it all the way out till mate, and I was like, I'm up like 2 rooks. Like what's happening? But you could just tell like pretty soon, just like based on like the carelessness of like I thought the position was cool and complicated,
Yeah.
and there's a lot to look at.
Yeah.
But like yeah, and then I play other people and we're just like we're fighting till the end, and I feel like that's like what chess is about. But yeah, you just like gave up really really fast. So and I feel like it's easy to do when you're like spiraling and like yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah, totally. The player who's like more locked in is sometimes surprised at the player who's giving up because you still see resources for them. You're still interested, and they're just in despair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes when I've been at my best, I've been surprised when my opponents resigned. Like literally, they resigned, and I was still just like, we're fighting, and they were just not fighting. Like,
yeah.
so.
The precondition for all of the fighting is that you have to want to fight.
You have to want to live. You don't want to live like
Yeah,
just hard.
yeah.
All right, I'm off.
Okay.
Are you all closing down or going on?
Yes.
I will be raiding someone immediately. Yes.
We'll all be raiding someone. Yeah.
So we can all triple raid somehow. I don't even know how to raid with the stream together thing, so we'll see what happens.
You just do it like normal. Yeah.
I mean, I typed a command in here earlier and it didn't work, but we'll see.
If it's a slash command, I think
Yeah.
it should work like normal because it only shows up in your chat too.
Yeah.
Also, Jay Nooms. Hello, I think we played in Chicago Open. I think we might have too, but I don't. I'm looking at the score sheet and I don't remember this game.
Who should we raid? Do we have anyone that we want to all raid together, or
Yeah.
I'm looking.
Drama Queen 555 is on?
Ah, Bella Queen. We can raid her. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm looking in the category.
Okay.
Okay. Drama Queen. Oh. 555.
Okay. Thank you so much, David.
Yes,
again, for
thank you,
doing
David.
This. Like, this is so insanely, yeah, it's so helpful. It's not even
Yeah.
funny how helpful it is. Yeah. Thank you.
And you can see you can do it 99% on your own without me, right? Now that you do it.
Yeah. All true.
I
And so
think
can
that
you, chat.
The questions that you probe also really help us guide us in the right direction. I feel like, sometimes you might be led astray otherwise, but I feel like you guide us in the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's definitely the
and-
most efficient.
Yeah, with experience, you should
Definitely
be
the
able
most
to.
efficient.
Yeah, with experience, you should
Definitely
be
the
able
most
to.
efficient.
Sorry. With experience, you should be able to ask more and more of the right questions yourself, right? But I'm just sort of showing it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Giving you some examples of the kind of questions to ask, Ultimately, instead of me asking it, it's you asking your opponent. Like after the game, you're like, hey, I noticed you rushed h5. Do you think I should be playing h5? And you just ask them what they think, and then you use that against them in the next game.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think my raid is ready to send, so I'm gonna go ahead and send it.
Okay.
Okay.
I will send mine. Oh.